very small. Everything is operated. We're still able to run things. So, or again, election, your opportunity to cross the finish line. So after this, it's just a series of protocols and standards that have to count them. But we're literally at the finish line. The question, how we cross it, and success based on everything. Free to jump in, free to say what you need to say. We take no offense. Welcome all around that area. So that's why we welcome your constituents.
So we move to item number 2, following this again, 2026-2028 budget.
The 26 budget, as you are very familiar with, includes property tax increases and some various increases. But we already talked about the final units, but as we go through the day-to-day, I'd like to move to a very high level review of all the fund equities that are under the balance and for, and I'm going to tell you I'm actually going to focus on the very first page. I would love to go through all 50 pages. But I will kind of I want to mention the whole fund. As we touch base on all the funds today, I'm also going to kind of point out the impact on the current year of the 25 budget. And that budget again, there have not been hardly any changes for the office, which is is going good. So if we start with that very first page, the beginning, we checked over on Tuesday and all of your major funds that are currently listed in the city's policy, fund balances, and tax reserves. Each and every one of those are within policy from 25 to 28. And if you look down the middle column area, that's your 26 year. Every single one of those that was in. You should feel very proud of that and confident that we're going through it, that the staff is helping to do this has really kept that. The only exception that I mentioned on Tuesday as well is in the very far right and over, you'll see a little red circle, and we may be out of the fund balance policy just for 1 year in 28 because we're going to be purchasing a higher ladder truck that year. We still have over $1 million in the fund. We'll take a little bit to cash flow the ladder truck, then we hope by the year 29 is going back. And that's totally acceptable within our policy and have one-time drawdowns. Any questions on the overall balances in major funds? Okay. So the very next thing then, but I think I'm going to jump right into, and Bob mentioned the kind of narrow terms. One of the main areas is our property taxes. And in front of you, with your handouts, I'm handing out number 1 at the very first page. What I'd like to do is to continue our discussions from Tuesday night. There's some questions on what we can have on the website. So if I could just take in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to walk through, here's some questions. These are only a couple options. You could have many other options. So I'm going to start with where we are on the day, like 25 and everybody needs to see that first one there. Our first downward budget rate is one number called 7198, and that generates $16.8 million. Of that $16.8 million, $787,000 related to funding for special CIP. And that's very low. I'm just gonna highlight them. That's where we are at today. Then, if you look at option one, it was back in the end of August, first part of September. Bob and I presented an option. What if we were to keep the levy rate frozen? What kind of dollars would be generated? And we went through what would we do if we had those additional funds? But that levy rate that we talked about, frozen, again, keeping it at $1.7 would generate $17.8 million. And if you look at the yellow line, that's where we were going to focus the additional funding up to $1,146,000 going through special CIP. And that was an increase of about $350,000. In the past, we can talk about trying to put $200,000 in million at that time. This was going to move it above that, just to do extra things. Follow on down that road. At the time, we calculated that the impact on our average residential home would be $44 annually. On a monthly basis, $3.67. For a total impact, including all of our fees, the utilities, franchise fees, and taxes, is $107,000. And there would have been no increase or reduction in that levy rate. So then as we move forward, last Tuesday, Bob and I, we have another option to take a look at. We have listened to you from September, and we came back with a revised recommendation on the levy rate. And there's where you will see that the levy rate was reduced to $1.704. And that is taking approximately 83.95% of the EAD growth, capturing about 83%. As we go down the road, then that levy rate would generate $17.6 million for an increase of about $837,000 in property taxes. That amount, I'll go through it quickly because I was following the previous week. The average impact on residents on an annual basis would be $37 property taxes. Monthly, $3.08 for a total of $110.20 total fees and taxes. That would be a 4.9% increase in taxes overall. That is a reduction in the levy of $1.54 cents. Then as we were talking on Tuesday night, we got brought forward, what would happen if we try to reduce it down to $10, or get the total impact on our residents, that blue line down closer to the $100 mark. That is what this option is. It's a $10 annual reduction. We would be capturing 56.9% of the EAD growth. The levy rate estimated to drop to $1.6785, and it would generate, if we were to reduce it out of the special CIP fund. I think that's how some of the other levies we would choose, but that's the most flexible one. We do CIP. Would bring it down to 718. For total taxes of 17.4. The impact variable fee on an annual basis of residential homes, $27. So that's the difference. $37 as recommended, down to 27. The impact on a monthly basis, $2.25, and it would be a savings to the residents of about 83 cents a month. The reduction on an individual home you need to look though, what does that do citywide? What does that impact citywide? And that's going on down the column. So citywide, it would be a reduction of 269,000 of the city. And if, and again, there's various options, if that were to affect only the special CIP fund over a 10-year period, it would impact a reduction of about $2.6 million. So I just need to know what that is. It would be a reduction of 4.13 cents. And it's not on your sheet, but that equates to the total taxes and fees per month will drop, as we previously talked about, $9.18. It would drop down to $8.35. So it's definitely savings on residents. Then, just for an example purposes, I also heard what if we try to keep the captured growth on the DAB at 50%. That's what that last question shows. And going down to the very bottom, it would be a reduction of $339,000 on an annual basis. If it was only CIP projects, it would be a reduction of $3.2 million, 4.8 cents. But one thing I do say, I'm kind of talking about the CIP, there are certainly other ways you can do this. You can, for instance, the very next item on the agenda here is payments to agencies. You can reduce payments to agencies, that was on $5 million, and then transfer money in from the general fund, transfer it into the state. We can reduce other departmental budgets, for instance. Although I thought that our operating budgets are very, very tight, but there's the contingency, that's another good one. But as we talk about this, I wanted to throw out some examples so we can have some discussions. And we're going to circle back around at the end of the day, and we're also going to talk about it more than that in the CIP. But before we do this, so your minds can be thinking about this. In your handouts, so you can make a spreadsheet and any of these options can have something together. Option number 10 on this spreadsheet, the first one. This is the one that you already received on Tuesday. I just want to spend a little more time to highlight. Number 1, this is our admin recommendation of keeping the reduction in the revenue $1.70. First thing I want to point out is in the 26 on property taxes, and $987,000 is in this fund. That's $200,000 increase over this year. And again, that continues to increase $200,000 each of the next 10 years. If you look at the last total property taxes over that 10-year period, $18,876,000. Now, the next thing I love in is your property, your projects going through the majority of those property taxes. It's that pink one, number 1. Take a look all the way across and you'll see criminal infrastructure for 10 years, $24 million. And you will see that increasing on that pink line throughout the year. We were at a little over $1 million, up to $2 million, and getting $3 million in 2032. That was following that strategic plan that we laid out a couple of years ago. So again, that was kind of the basis for the reasoning of our original recommendation. The next thing to point out is the yellow line, number 3, road number 3. Total amount that is available unallocated for special city project improvements, that's your grants. You can go pay for city hall. Those types of projects, $15 million in the work containment. So we can follow that one up money flowing in from. Then the next one is number 6, the housing fund. We talked about on Tuesday, we were recommending consideration for some seed money over that housing fund. Go over to the side, there's not a total, but you can write it in. It's $2 million. $2 million right there for them. And then lastly, pointing out, it's a highlight in 25, the very top part at 575. Our recommendation was consideration of taking the ending reserves and applying it here to the special CIP fund, which really helps in the answer. So that was option number 10. Remember, let people remember you all. And no one has seen this, and all they talk about it, they all have it. This is showing you if we were to reduce property taxes by that $10, this would reduce that levy rate, reduce the levy rate down to $1.6785. So we'll go through exactly the same thing on this one. Number one, table 26 years. That's where you'll see that property taxes coming into that fund is reduced. It's actually reduced from the current year. It's reduced. And if you look across the whole line, before it was 18 million, you'll now see that total and 16,182. Now the corresponding thing is if you take a look down on number one. We just talked about how we drew from 2 million to 3 million. And on the previous one, we were at 24 million of infrastructure. This one reduces it. I'm not gonna say it's by not a lot. 2.6 is a lot, but this is still a lot. Total project, the CIP, 21,307,000. So it's a lot of money that we focused on the CIP. It is a reduction of 2,692 from our original recommendation. Doing this, the way we put this together, and this is what Bob and I also talked about, we want to delete that unallocated funds further intact, so you'll see that 15 million is still there. If you look down into the housing fund, line number 6, that $2 million is still there. We are taking that 575 of the excess reserves. So you'll see that. Even with that property tax reduction, it is $2.6 million, and as time goes by, years go by, you may want to try to bump that back up in line with your strategic plan. But this is what it would look like if you were to take the reduction out of the PA. So I just wanted you to be thinking about that. Now we're going to circle back. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for showing us that, council. Yes.
Thank you for putting it together. I like where this takes us a lot better. I also think, yes, it is that reduction for us, but we also have to remember that just as that number of the state budget, it helps the residents. And so we had 37 instead of $27 additional this year on average. That's not just that's next year, that's every year, rather. And we're gonna ask them for it again next year. And so that compounding over time, Jody, sets us up for that increase. This year we have a lot higher costs in our pension obligation increases, and we committed to cover them, but we should, but I think, when those come back as good years, we're gonna put that extra money back in the discussion fund. And I think it's just one of the things that this fund is allowing us to do is to build that up so that when we don't try and capture that huge amount, what are James and when the property value increases, you don't get that money to sell your house. And the residents will pay for that. And that's where, like I said, I like to be in the middle. Some of the growth, especially that concern. I mean, if we go through a year where we put in $10 million worth of new buildings and stuff in the city, but I'm all for having a different conversation about that. But
I would like to build up what you just said. If we have a year where we're putting in a whole bunch of new properties, we know that that's coming. So when I look at the 10-year impact, I mean, I like that the money that you've shown here that would have to be reduced, a reduction in CIP projects, I like that you've taken it out of the CIP based on our PCI recommendations, right? That's a place where we can be flexible, because we'll still be doing work. It won't be as much as it has been. I can tell you that when I look at that 10-year, and I think about transitions over time, there's no guarantee that any future council is going to put $3 million toward the PCI, right? Improving our network. There's absolutely no guarantee. So I don't want to burden taxpayers now for people that may not push the same agenda in terms of our infrastructure in the future. To me, it makes more sense to be as conscientious as possible about still putting money toward the PCI project, but maybe just not as much over time. So it's almost like just losing 1 year, 1.5 years of what we would have been able to get done, and when you look at the 2.6, 2.7 million, that, at this rate. I'm actually very intrigued, I have to say, to this council at option 4, simply because it would probably still keep us at a total of 20 million. We would dip below 20 million on our infrastructure project. Even though I have one, just above. Okay, for me, I'm okay. I'm okay with that, if that means that we're not having $100 of new bridge that our residents have to pay this year. I know that is a sacrifice, but as I mentioned in my plan, it is a season sacrifice. And I am excited that we do have units coming online in buildings and all that. You just look at the strategic plan or the riverfront center plan with the neighborhoods around I-74 Bridge and stuff. That's going to make a difference in the future. So I know you asked us to just think, but I'm thinking out loud. And I don't know if anybody is with me on the option 4, but I'm not scared. Yes.
I just want to that as we're having these discussions that we were talking about and having stuff in schools, the county, so our part would be $100, but when you have those other tax bodies, which is going to increase, and folks are really struggling, so I think that we have to feel our effort as low as possible, as possible. It's really
I don't know, go 15, but
I like the.
I'm
the middle ground. But I think that we can do kind of, keep that.
I would be very, very weary of, and I flip-flop on this. If we're cutting all of the projects, or any of the projects for the PCI, we committed as a council to spend money to get lasers and computers and cameras to measure the city and invest to increase our score. We haven't even had a second measurement. And we're already talking about cutting funds. We're taking our foot off the pedal before we can even look at the speedometer. And I think it would be a bad idea to cut funds from the thing we committed to. How much was that, $100,000 to measure? And we're already talking about cuttings. What that tells us is we've noticed the improvement. And where do we think it's time to pull our foot off the gas? And I would argue that the next projects on the table are residential streets, taking care of arterials. Now it's residential, and this is where people feel it the most, and it is the #1 issue on that survey. And I understand the impact to the residents. I also understand that this is probably the wrong place to take it from, because this is what people want. And maybe the answer is after we do the PCI next year, then we make it. If our score goes up, because we haven't had bad winners and all this stuff, then we can talk about it. I don't know, doing it before we.
I'm in agreement with what he's saying, because infrastructure has been very important to us. We had 2 years where we really committed, and we've seen some growth, and we've seen some improvements. And now, when we get to the residential streets, which they are really, we cut that. And I'm not in favor of raising taxes, anyway, but I think we need to find a balance where we can still make it the infrastructure we promise. Because if we don't progress council, how do we know the next council? The ones before it. And right now, while we are in that driver's seat, we need to keep that.
Yes, Mr. Neal.
I also sort of flip thought here. Our local events, so that's a good thing. Just to speak from my board, knowing who participates in advocating for what they need, is finally a president. So when we talk about like what people want or need, is also the things that we understand. So, saving them any dollars, I think, is important. So if not here and there, it's going to be a discussion, but it's family.
So I think as we look at this, I agree with the procedural approach of how we're taking it out of that special CIP fund for the infrastructure in the tax line. But I also think as we go through the data, that I think we find a way to pull back in other places, that money would be reallocated and covered for that. So as much as I want to see that, and I think this is the right move, because we are trying to prevent from having all this whiplash on these funds that are on the property tax levy before the arms. I think we have to remember that this is not the only source of income to that place. I also think what we're talking about reducing is not our infrastructure. It's a slight decrease in the increase to our infrastructure agreement that we're making above and beyond kind of every year we're trying to grow on that on that. And to extend the current analogy, we're looking at that sharp turn of what our residents are facing, and it is time to slow down a little. I think that as we talk about other sources we'll have to replace, including when we put at the end of the year, we know we're going to take account of contingency, whatever left over, and we may put a little bit dark, a little bit here and that, both that's going to end up in this fund as well. So I just think when we think of that on the whole, and when we think about what we're doing the rest of the day, maybe we'll find some other place. And that would be good. And finally, I'd be all for reducing the utility franchise fees instead of the property tax, but I've lost that debate. So I think it's about the whole picture. And we've made every other decision along the way. We've wrapped more of our residents in this.
Thank you, I need the alternative source and system. But I will just give an example. Those who are born is at the 5th Street and 577. I would say maybe 30 to 40 feet road that is necessary for the answer. Why didn't you go out? Why have like, hey man, so people are not saying that means people are not concerned about that. So for that, I would agree with
Oh, yeah.
Just, all this is connected, we all want to do what's best by the government. A little history, the way we got here is the previous councils took the foot off the gas and hopefully, and that's how we save money, we coast. We build up momentum and then we coast, and then we cut taxes, and everyone's happy. But unfortunately, if you don't change your oil on your car, you're damaging. Eventually the engine's gonna burn out. And that little bit of maintenance that we've been budgeting for, it is extra, but it is maintenance. We're fixing the mistakes previous councils. We haven't measured it yet. We don't know how well it's working. And we're talking about cutting. When we leave the potholes, we leave the road all we're doing is deferring it. Infrastructure costs outpace inflation in terms of increase. So if we push this street project a year, it's gonna cost more year over year. And all we're doing is adding costs to future councils, future residents, and those potholes turn into flat tires, which do impact residents' bottom line. Oftentimes more than the tax levy would. So this is not, it's all kind of bundled together, but I think that this is the kind of improvement that people really like. And if we can find alternative sources to cover the gap, I'm really happy to hear that. But I don't like in option 11, seeing the increased infrastructure projects being decreased without knowing where the money's going to come from.
You don't like this option 11?
We go from 2 million to 1.7.
Right.
Yeah. I prefer staying.
So you're saying you'd like to put some other source to cover the gap? Like if you went with this property tax option, you'd still want to fund it at 2 million just.
And I don't know.
Honestly, because, well, I guess I might as well say it now, because we already talked. It's the cannabis fund. I mean, you've got 315 in level up, and 150 in urgent and utility system. And you're telling me that the community says that infrastructure is their number one thing. So that these social programs not funded out of the property tax are a place to take from. I can see the value of keeping these now when we have so much need in our community, as demonstrated by the fact that the level B money ran out by July, right? And it's probably going to be a worse situation in this coming year. However, I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here. I think you know where my heart is with these programs are, right? But these programs meet a portion of the population, whereas the property tax levy, I guess you could argue it also meets a portion, right? But it's passed on to others. Get what I'm saying? It's like, how many people are we trying to impact at what rate, right? And that's the only thing that you end up looking at some of this allotment, because I don't know, I mean, other than personnel or other things where we didn't run the right that cash. I guess I was saying I don't mind 270. I don't mind not covering 270 if you can't move the money from someplace else. Yes, then
You'll play the devil advocate, but I'll never play the angel's advocate. I would never support taking setback. Those are programs that go out there and protect our most vulnerable citizens. And I think also the idea that, those only help a certain kind of people is not true. Because
please don't misunderstand me as kind. I mean percentage.
Well, right now I'm saying that that's untrue, because empty houses impact the entire city of Moline, evicted people, additional homeless population, losing population. When these measures to help support people safe and healthy, make them a hospital, for health, all those things. And so that's where I think the argument of why they have this investing in helping people secure is better than the city as a whole. So I think the idea of wanting to kind of impact less people who that.
I would agree that, and we can get to this when we get to the change of the conversation. 150 we gave this year for added assistance.
No, that's separate.
Well, the actual 150.
Yep.
That was separate than?
Yeah, that's run through the city as opposed to.
Okay, I think, okay, you're right, so it run through the city. That, in my mind, was for 2025, not ongoing expense. And so I think that we should not be budgeting that, on a recurring basis. It should be a requested, amount every year as needed, and we can find the funds if we put that as a priority. Because the purpose of the budget is planning that, and so if we can perhaps reallocate that 150 towards the enhanced
So like, yeah.
filling the gap. I think we're going to find, there's going to be actual money if we need to later in the year, and this.
I was just gonna say, I disagree, I think that we do need a budget for that, and we ran out of those funds so soon, and people are losing jobs, people are being furloughed. There's talk of SNAP benefits not being paid out, next month, if the show party shutdown continues. I think that things are gonna get worse, I think it's gonna get better, and we just need to. Sorry.
Right, it's better than you have with your painting.
Like I said, I thank you for my comments.
You know, these are difficult decisions. One hand, you're trying to balance the infrastructure demands. The demand, put the demand below us. Really with the intersections. They want all of that done, like the sidewalks near and near to the roads we want. You know, and on the other hand, then you've got all of our programs and our, you said, vulnerable population. It's there. We know, talk to them, hear from them, we get emails from people, even recently, people who lost, work over on the army. So that needs not going to get better. That's true. You know, we, I think, as a city, we're very practical about lowering $2 down to 70, while others haven't been able to do that. We watch our tax bills go up. And above now, that's because it's insane. We have been doing our part to bring the loss down. And we're not able to do that enough to grow. So we look and we went, look into the horizon, what's coming. We bring these projects forward to you for approval. It starts to change these game plan and that growth and development. That's it. Short of that growth, you would not be having this conversation. I assure you, you'd be looking at how low to keep the increase in taxes as opposed to how low to lower it. And that's where we sit today. Previous council probably had no growth, had to deal with that scenario. And you have to look at it, take care of the first thing they want. That's what. So, if you look at it, if you look at the levy page, one thing in Canada, I started pushing this 4 years ago, and it's almost sacrosanct to bring it up, but, you could look at the library and the parks. You could look at lowering those for a year, because both of those funds are well funded now. The reserves are well established. It's not going to create a big problem today as it did 4 years ago. I don't think you're going to see it adversely impact major capital programs in this library. Got abandoned, right? Major legacy project that we did at Kent Riverside done with this next project as well. So I think that is one place you can shave off some of this to get to a lower tax levy. Throw that out as well. The other things you can't do, that levy is fire protection, unfortunately, the pension paid off $500,000 there. There was a pension structure, but they can't have an obligation for pension by law. So, just talking that out. For later this week.
I think Bob, the point about we could do all of this, we all like to do all of it. It is really when it comes to it's we're not talking about how much to cut. what the current city is currently doing. We're talking about how much to cut our tax increase. Right, and that to me is the kind of the big piece. It's not pulling, it's pulling back from what was a recommendation for our increase. We're not pulling back, and I just think that's important. That's where we are. And we're very lucky, and the staff has kept us there. And the fact that with, you know, with our commitment to keeping wages increasing and supporting our workers, that our staff advantage also puts together a budget that only have at 1.65, 1.45 increment. That is an incredible number. And so I just, it's with all those pieces in mind. We are very fortunate that our this little there's I mean, what we're going to increase in public, but it is talking about the increase.
Okay, I think we'll go to bullet point number 2 then, like discussion on proposed SSA number 5 property tax levy.
Yes, that's it, for 5 and number 6, there's no recommended levy rate the same. And last year, we had to have a truth in taxation for the hearing of those, and we got them back up to the level that they're.
So that took care of
Yes.
the third bullet point.
Yes.
So we can go to bullet 5 if there are no questions. Yes.
Have a comment. I thank Bob and staff for overcoming the vacancies. We're continually trying to look at improvements on how to start, so that we know what we're getting returned. And so I'm in full support of what we have proposed, but
Go ahead, Liz.
So the next time we have from this agency, we'll be talking about some of these things in June. So we'll be talking about the board, and the last one, maybe, our presentation, I think, was September the 23rd. We had tenants who landed on 2026, we'll put it on from 26 from $1,550,000. And the funding sources for those include some of the TIP funds, FSAs are coming from the money. General fund is helping support those agency funds by $925,000. CIP is contributing to some of the public art funding, and we have cannabis funding of those 2 agencies for the Moline urgent rental assistance as well as.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to remove the $150,000 line 18 from the 2026 budget.
The second. Other questions from the council? We just have 1 second. Have we communicated to the folks that have asked for something and their numbers were not recommended? Yeah, that's really helps and easy opening number.
I have not communicated with the work. It was the email. Just midweek asking, responding to my email from 2 months ago, and rather than respond to the information requested. That I have not communicated with them. But I recommend that if you do want to spend that $44,000, I should do that. This department budget, but this department right now, somebody who public functions. And I have spoken to you about that. Because that would control, feel, we have data, we have installed, we're getting nothing.
But I just think it's a good follow-up courtesy of going to someone's ask for funds to close the loop and just say, that's not being recommended, and then. Yes.
Line 8,
Yes, same.
is this for the White House or for uplift shelters? So they're two different things. If we're not gonna do uplift shelters, I'm happy to remove that budget item. And do we need 50,000 a year to do the White House?
We would not need 50,000 a year White House if it becomes a little property. Yeah, suggest that renewable forward with their plans to manage properties downtown, that are a lot of things that properties completed all the works that they all manage or oversee the property along with the property that White.
So do we have an uplift shelter plan, or could this be part of the housing fund idea? As an option that they could be funded there.
The housing fund.
Yeah, this new Moline housing fund, seed money, I don't know.
I would assume that, I think you could respond to where all the shelters are at. I think it was originally presented, correct me if I'm wrong, AJ, as an option for us to look at, that in terms of like a broad, multi-pronged approach to housing solutions. These are far more temporary than what the Moline housing fund would be tasked with, I think. So I don't think it's a good alignment necessarily, but I think, after seeing the project uplift overview that was in our discussion a few meetings ago, where we learned that we are putting nearly $1 million for preventing homelessness, right? We're really working on that prevention side. I do think at some point this council has got to think about the folks that, in some way, how to address the folks that are out in different ways than we are addressing now. I don't know if we have the funds to do it here. This is a 50,000. Yeah, and continue to work with other partners, to address the other needs. But Adrian, did you want to add anything else about these things?
Regarding that, we have pulled together some numbers for that. We have a meeting on Monday for the housing task force. We're gonna talk about that and have also the board to do that.
For uplift shelters?
Yes, and
So we're kind of being asked to fund something we don't have full information about.
Like I said before, we should be a funder and not an owner. Otherwise, you have to have the capacity administratively to operate. And now you're talking about huge increase in cost. We have to have staff just for that purpose. There's no reason to do that. We have to have a skilled staff who doesn't manage operations. That's why I always said funding is a great thing, because it means you really commit to something like we did with Bubble Out and other programs, but owner operator, not so much. I don't know.
So you're saying
There's
this
no other cities that
50,000
are owner operated, which is, look around us. No owner operated, this fund.
Big cities do that, and they even come into problems. Like Albuquerque was a great example this summer. I see two hands, I think, but 1 second. So what you're saying is the meeting you have upcoming with numbers pulled together addresses 50,000 going to somebody else to potentially operate this kind of thing, but or it still costs to have uplift shelters, and you still have setup costs and all that because they've got to do more and you got to find the right place for them to be. And we're just not there yet. I almost wonder if doing the legwork now makes sense and finding 50K in 2026's council contingency makes more sense than budgeting 50,000 right now for something we don't have all the information about. but I saw some hands up before Mr. Hill and then Mr. Bismarck.
And I would agree. I agree with you, Bob, that's why it's best to take records. I think that's when we need to push. We also find out that some of our community partners are not able to. Either they don't have the capacity to follow. So I think it's better to have.
I guess, what I'm looking at it is, I understand exactly what Bob was saying, but the gap is here. The people aren't here. So what, Rock Island doesn't want to do. I mean, they don't, more than what they've already done. Davenport doesn't want to do anything. So what are we going to do about the people who are actually here? When it gets cold, what are we going to do? So we've got to have some kind of plan, but you're going to do with these people. Or not, we're going to have those people, and I mean, this is fun. So,
I think this council agrees probably with that, it's the mechanism to get there, right? So I think it's more about, do we put it in the budget now, or do we just find the 50K when it's needed, when we have a full-on program that's been able to be developed, right? I mean, am I correct, council, that we're not arguing that we shouldn't do something, but that when we decide to fund it and how we fund it is still up?
Karen, could you remind us what, how much stuff in the 2025?
What's next is the team development.
I just think that's a good contextual number for us to have on hand. Very much don't know to allocating that at this moment, but I think they did the number. Like this would be. This would be perfect. And I think this is the one thing where I would say, like, the program goes prematurely or infrastructure because this need may, it may need more and anything else that we can work it that. The only piece that gives me hesitation going back at it is that it's gonna be something once we get it going, we're gonna go. Which also makes it put in the 2026 budget almost.
We're still going through a lot of heavy lifting. When we meet, that load doesn't get lighter, the deeper we dig, we're just not there. It's a very complicated question, and what our neighbors do impacts what we do. Right? And that's a huge issue. And but you're right, we're one problem. That's happening. That has happened. So we don't want that. And the winter shelter, I don't think open. I'm open. Actually, we did it. 70 beds, I think, over at Davenport. And that's it. And people are basements.
There
I
are,
think we need.
so I want,
But I was just gonna say that I agree, I mean, we're not saying that we're not doing anything, it's just. I think it's really great that we're having meetings and that it's happening this week and that what we do really, that is like.
We need everybody.
so then I'm getting the sense that this council may be okay removing this 50,000 from the payments to agencies. But I would need a motion for that.
So moved.
Please state how you.
Your Honor, I would make a motion to remove line 8 from the payments to agencies, which is the White House / publish $50,000.
Motion by Timian, seconded by French. Discussion. This is with the understanding that we are coming back to this particular project's not going away because staff is working on proposal for us. And we will find a way to fund it, potentially on a contingency, but that's what we talked about. Okay, anything further from the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wait, I need to do a vote.
It doesn't have to be rolled down, but the committee of the whole can do that, so that is not required.
have a?
Yeah, it's certainly that's good for us.
It keeps it consistent. And I do a little call. Alderperson Razzak.
Aye.
Alderperson Simeon.
Aye.
Finn. Aye. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy. Garcia. That's six. Okay. Thank you. Amend that motion passes, but we would still have to, we're ready to do the motion in red, yes? Motion to approve payments to agencies as amended.
Motion to approve payments to agencies amended.
Okay, second by Castro. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call please. Alderperson Razzak. Simeon.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil. Castro. Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Motion passes, so then. We move to cannabis tax fund.
Yes, and cannabis, it is your PPF, agent is 220. And I think what we got, yeah, this is the fund equity. And even with the dollars that we have previously talked about allocating, we still have an ending fund balance of about $200,000, which is nice because we have committed funds to from agencies, it tends to know about Karen's revenue comes to life 1 year. We still have funds available. We've got $215,000 to our special CIP fund. $315,000 project now, and that is an increase from the current year is actually $265,000. And it's so the increase 200. It's 265,000, which is amended at budget, October 1 to 315,000. And we are recommending that 315,000. And then we've got the new Moline purchase.
Can I quick ask, how that's been used so far since we passed it? Do you have a current amount? Since knowing the need and we passed.
Are you talking about how the?
150.
Emergency rental.
We probably had maybe 18 calls for assistance. Many of them don't have a lease. So we have not been able to help them. We probably assisted 5 people. You know, one person was renting from their relative. Yeah, it's kind of agreement between them, nothing written down on paper.
That would want them also.
Yes, But most people are requesting anywhere from $850 a month to $1,700 a month. So rent is quite high. We've had a couple for Mid-American bills as well.
Does that mean there might be leftover money at the end of the year? I mean, it sounds like if we've helped 5 people since we approved it. But I mean, obviously winter months are a different animal, but there's a chance there could be leftover.
From the 150, yeah, I suppose, yeah, if it's already almost the end of October and there's 2 more months left.
People haven't gotten their energy bill yet.
Right, but that 150 is just for this year,
Yeah.
so it would be left over, just like in housing contingency, there could be leftover from 150 after December. And then if, because no one took up his amendment, right, or his motion, that money is still here, so it rolls over.
It just stays in the.
Yeah.
Well, it's November, we might as well say. the furlough people who aren't getting their checks, they're gonna be called, the utility people, they're gonna need their utilities, so November, October, the money's probably gonna be used.
Yeah, there's no, we can't predict the future.
We're talking about that team, let's say.
On January second.
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt.
So actually, my understanding was this was a fund we put the money into, but it uses those funds out, not that this is a strictly year-to-year fund.
It's all over.
Because it's just in separate funds, so.
It stays with it because.
And we had only approved the additional funding. Right, I mean, as we think about that, we're not hesitating, applying back too quickly, knowing that we went several months without having that fund. Next year. So it's a huge effort.
Yeah. I don't think it, people should think that law back is like people watching it like off because you just gotta find those dollars. It's really more like, if your uplift program or uplift shelter or those housing solutions need more funds and there was something left over that you thought could put that direction. It's just a conversation, like, start. Am I wrong?
Thanks, no one, just a number next year. I would rather let that ride on the roll. By the time we get to next year, I think that's when we have a better idea of the whole year and how it's done. I just, what I don't want to do is remove cap, in that service.
Where else are we at? Reports.
I think that's all I have, when we get fun.
Any further discussion? in the council? I will say I'm pleased that we're keeping the level at 315 instead of bumping even further, which they want to go through. I mean, it's always nice when we can help more people with this bill.
Did better response.
Well, and I think, you know, I brought back that suggestion from our former Quad City who's running stuff out, who was running out of Denver, who said, you have to bring those nonprofits along. You can't just find a national partner, or you can't just go to a different partner. If you need them to function differently, you have to train them how to do that. And I think you guys are doing that because of the reporting you're asking for. You know, it continues to improve. So that's a good relationship. Okay, if there's nothing further, roll call please on cannabis fund. Wait, yes.
You're right, make a motion to approve the savings tax budget.
That was Schmidt and Finch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Alderperson Razzak.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Finch. Aye. McNeil. Maxwell.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy. Thanks, Wendy.
We move to the number 7.
This is one big thing. This, opioid, one last thing, we talked about this. Because the settlements, they're still waiting to do the project, and settlement jobs. It's already there.
Mr. Price gives an update on how many people have been enrolled in it or anything?
Oh, we've had so many, it seems just on there with at least 15 people, right? I mean,
I think we, interviewed 24.
the program has been, I would say, very successful. We have had a lot of interest.
A lot of rental assistance, some property taxes, gift cards, for essential household goods. But probably the main is, rental assistance and, vehicle pay.
So those are literally the same things that Level Up does. So going in, when these funds run out, it's in a sense, we already have a similar program ready to take some of those people.
Yeah, I mean, there's some similarities. I mean, this is obviously direct access to a subset of, society.
Right.
you're kind of pulling them out right when they need the assistance, but yes, we have some overlap, I would say.
Anything further? All right, so motion to approve national opioid settlement for the presented.
Motion to approve national opioid settlement as presented.
Good, Finch and Razak. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razak.
Aye.
Simeon.
Aye.
Finch. Aye. McNeil.
Aye.
Fitzgerald. Smith.
Aye.
Murphy.
I,
Motion passes. Special events fund. Review special events allocation.
And in total, this is a fund where we have funds coming in, the funds going out, so the actual fund balance is a little like $5,000 on an annual basis. So you can put the projects. We talked about this as well for a couple of times. Not a lot of changes here except for next year in 2026, you'll see a number there in the red. $100,000 for the America 250 celebration, and then it's going to be a direct transfer in from the general fund. And we do not decrease the $160,000 total. Special events. I don't know. About those.
I've heard a few things, I don't know that the council's talked much about
We haven't talked too much about it, but obviously July 4th next year is nation. And maybe that's a big plan across the state, across the country, actually. For around 76 years. Really, it was a lot of fun, actually. It was a great year. And we're still here. So that tells you that you're here. Too. I just, we talked about drone shows, we talked about fireworks. I think we kind of settled in on a suggestion that we have a community event probably at Riverside Park. Where money itself, in large part, rather than like drone shows, we could be used to provide free food for all attendees, free hot, free burgers, free chips, whatever. So that's free admission to the pool that day. We're trying to give back to the community and those who can celebrate to give them something to come, because that's who we are as a nation. So that is kind of the plan, but it's in the infancy stages of starting.
Are we planning on sponsorship as well?
Yes.
Is 100,000 too much?
It might be, but we don't know.
Should we be budgeting something you don't have a full plan for yet?
It's kind of how we did with 150. We raised 150,000. Mistaken. But we are going to go for contributions. It's also part of the plan. So we may not use all of it.
it.
They
are not
the
same kind of
Oh, no.
The thing here too for you to know is that, the IML has been, I don't know if you will be getting those emails too. They've shared some resources with this, and, just the conversations about it was important for me to have its own version, sort of. Mr. McNeil, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. My questions about that. So we know that the city.
No, because I tried to suggest that because I wanted a big drone show, because I've seen them and at their conferences, they're really amazing when they're huge, not like the 10-minute. This summer or whatever. And like literally no one was interested. And some of them already have red, white, and blue, and that's fine. I really appreciate what the staff came up with because it is personal. And it's acknowledging that not everybody is gonna have the resources to keep something special.
If I'm staying now, I do then does not mean that not dying on. So I can tell you that I don't know and other services or with more money, I do that to spend more. You know, it's for us, it's once in a life.
I'm sorry, did I miss another hand?
All right, I have my question,
Related to this,
Well,
special
okay,
events.
yeah, our special, I'm sorry, special events fund, and this is a question for Mr. Atkins. I work at Washington University, do I need to? I work at one of the, agencies that's requesting special events.
Draw salary.
Yes. So do I need to,
You cannot.
for the entire value?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to.
Probably constitute a felony, actually, so.
Bill has a way of saying.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce the two-day celebration to 75.
There's second.
I'll say it. Thank you. The purpose is, we have contingency. We are going to be approaching community partners to sponsor, provide food. There is going to be extra money. I'm trying to whittle away a little bit so we can hit our tax levy that we are targeting, and a little bit here, and a little bit there.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Wait, hang on. You haven't hold on yet.
If I remember this. I was sitting here thinking about a similar piece. We're trying in our budgeting in our forecasting to come to an agreement where we not, oh, we're not okay with this project. But then I think that as we think about that 25, we can find that again if we find that it's necessary. I know it's your so yeah, I think as we think about what we're getting and allocating this makes sense.
Now, Mr. Lazar.
Well, I'm fine. That's, I want to take on the green points.
There's nothing further, roll call on the motion to decrease funding of the 250 celebration to 75. Alderperson Razzak. Simeon.
Aye.
Finn. Aye. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Smith. So if there's nothing further, we need someone to motion to approve the special event fund as presented, and again, Ms. Castro's not, or as amended, and Ms. Castro's not.
You're gonna make a motion to approve the special event fund as amended.
Seconded by Finch. Discussion. Roll call. Alderperson Razzak.
Aye.
Simeon.
Aye.
Finn. McNeil.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Great, motion passes. Then second page. And we've been here 9 at the hour and 20 minutes. Usually break for but I'm sure we're ready for that, or you can go a little further. Go a little further. All right, rental housing program, please.
Oh, rental housing program, we have discussions of that in September. Yeah, main point to point out here, the main intent of this program was to prevent and the fees that we're currently charging are covering our costs. We are not recommending anything. And the program has been our total licenses, this is a little bit more. This was back in September of 25, 2025 licenses issued to date is over 1,715.
Wasn't all on board. This is kind of a step back thinking about it question. Especially now that it's not correctly. Is this a sort of thing? So it's set up in development center. Should this be established or put into an enterprise fund model? Advantages, disadvantages, I just, when we have things that are self-sustaining, like our utilities departments, and we can set that up, that's also one way to sort of lock that into, we as a county, everyone can sort of make that long-term intended to stay that way. So just around that general question.
That's a very, very good point. And when this used to come out of the general fund inspections, and when you guys wanted to set up this housing, we actually set up a separate fund as a special revenue fund. It's not entirely as detailed as an enterprise fund, but it keeps all of those revenues and expenditures separate. And because there's not capital involved or capital in the program, it's serving the same purpose as special revenue. Not only will you can see a snapshot right there on pull out the page, it's got its own financial reporting of your revenue.
So because there's no capital needed necessarily, it's better, you're saying it's better to have it as a special revenue fund than an enterprise?
It's low dollars, it's all.
Juice is not what Speedy's you're saying. Which is fine, I'm asking the question.
It's good. Established it, actually, it's only said we could set up separate funds. And we chose to set up a special fund.
And the auditor.
Carol, are we projecting new units in the revenue stream? We know about apartments coming online. Is that all part of our projections, or do we just wait till they open and then readjust?
They can see those revenue numbers when they're so sad. But maybe Chris can address that more.
Right, because, I don't think we factored in 100 new units downtown, for example, in these numbers. I don't think we factored McKinley School or these other historic buildings that might work with the river edge zone. So I think, Timian's point is right on.
The fund could be higher next year as a result of new units.
So,
Do you have a projection of like, once we hit this many more units, we're gonna need another inspector or anything like that?
I don't, Mayor, I don't have those concerns, I guess, just because the other thing that we've seen is they've been able to, some of these properties become A properties and they don't need as much work either. So, we would need to see, I think, a couple of years of this cycle to really know that. But I don't show those concerns right now. In fact, we've been kind of thinking about, should we have them, not that they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs or whatever, but we kind of thought about, are there some other zoning things that we could have them do?
Right, and then
Your Honor, I make a motion to approve the rental housing fund as presented.
motion by Schmidt, seconded by Castro, discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian. Bench. Vivian.
Aye.
Castro.
That motion passes. Number 10, land bank. Barnes.
And the landing. Okay, we talked about this. This fund will be officially closed out by December 31st. And Andrew received direction signing this last week. And for $50 as we presented them here for you to the 25-year loan.
Motion to approve the land bank fund?
Right, motion by Timian, seconded by Razzak. Discussion. I would just wanted to say, I love the staff for bringing it work. I'm really hoping we have enough information on the housing fund, that if we decide to fund that and get that going, that's not turned into the same kind of sort of lot. If there's nothing further, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian.
Aye.
Finn.
Aye.
Answer.
Aye.
Murphy.
Alright, motion passes. Number 11, public art.
Again, we talked about this one for attorneys. In front of you, on the page 305, if you're on your laptop. And then you'll see revenues for 2026, there's 100,000 in there split between 25 and 26. Metro. And then expenditures for specific art projects in 26 are 253,000. We got transfers in from the general fund, and this is coming from the council contingency, and then transferred out to parks fund 75,000. And we project that there's going to be another 16,000 for CIP projects, so a 2% of over those projects. Then you'll see on the very next page, it's a list of the projections of everything that our board is recommending. And currently at the end of 2028, we'll still have $200,000 in reserves, but I know they've got a lot of projects in the works.
There's no such thing as a mayor contingency, correct? Oh, it's council.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't say mayor. I say mayor and it's council. It is written council and I say mayor.
I mean, I suppose if we can amend that.
Oh, do I have written?
You have it written as mayor. In 2025,
This time,
2026, the bottom of this page 2306.
Oh, I have it over there. Okay. Nope,
It's like scribbled there.
it is, and I did that correctly.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah, no problem. But I don't know, anyone else in the council wondering why we're taking contingency or like why that's proposed versus also the comment that we brought up a few meetings ago about should we find a different way to fund this because 2% from builders is another tax on builders, making it maybe a little harder to recall this comment.
Yes. I understand that council has, that's my typical opinion, often we cut out of funding and then apply continuous money at this meeting to do it. I don't really appreciate that contingency being pre-applied. I mean, if it's an item coming and saying we have this thing we should do. But I really think we should not engage in that practice going forward, reallocating something against it. That's I don't know how we feel that same way, but that's, and then with the $235,000, is that after or before this planned expenditure?
referring to the down by the queue.
No, the council contingency, going with $235,000.
That's an it. That's an error.
So that is already assuming that we've spent that 75.
It isn't correct.
Yes, the current year's council contingency. Okay, so at least it is credited against that, so thanks out of it. I don't see a reason or point to adjust or try to amend that or change it at this juncture. But I would ask that, and I would ask the current year to be not engaged in it in that particular panel, unless it's going to be council first to say, why not? Yes. Because I see it's noted, against council contingency in future years as well. issues. So I don't know.
I like to help everybody, like this, and this, when we originally set this up at the exactly that. We were waiting for years, see which CIP projects came in, and that. One market. We did the 2% CIP project, or we're gonna make up the difference. Well, the management look at the money, it's very difficult to plan the projects. Because sometimes the CIP projects, we get deferred, there was anything. And so, the now with this footnote down here is that for the 1 year in 2024, council adopted to fund any deficit up to the 75,000 for the council contingency. Then the public art fund, had asked there be any critical consideration of just funding that on an annual basis with have plenty of good types of projects to move forward with.
Yeah, I think that sums it up well. The other thing they've run into is that a lot of that CIP money that they thought they were gonna get, they found out that there was federally funded projects, and that federal money doesn't contribute to public art, or, you know, Seventh Avenue gets a lot of federal money, for example. So that, I think it's a couple things, right? It's a lot of that federal funding from CIP, that's less than they thought they were gonna get, and then, of course, these are just exciting, you know, this is gonna be our first major project out of that plan. So it is projected to be a $400,000 project. And that's probably one of the smaller projects in the plan. It's expensive to do public art. I don't necessarily disagree about the tax and development. You'll see your first one of those with the Streamline project. So you'll see, if you go to the back of the old post office, you'll see where Andrew has, put art on that, the wall that's behind the building. So that's not actually on the building, but the wall that leads to the basement. So that's our first, I believe our first like economic development public art project.
So we don't have a proposal yet to change the 2% funding. Is that coming forward with something like that next year or something?
You know, if that's the direction, we can certainly do that. I think it'd be a fairly easy change to either change the number or remove it altogether if that's the direction.
I suppose we don't have to give that direction right now.
We want it to be kind of pay bill program.
Yeah.
Bill, maybe that was the original thought 4 years ago. That's how we ended up 50 months.
Right.
That doesn't mean to keep it.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that's not working for a couple of reasons. One, we have a liability funding. And I think us giving some money to them, I support the money coming from the city budget, making that fund a little bit every year, like 75, that they did then be built up. So instead of a big project, and then it draws that out of there. I mean, but I would love to see not very reliable funding source, and it just has a developer issue. Let's say we did that part of it. I failed to do really weak without hope. This
It's easier to hit them up for a donation.
and yeah, and just pay for it and know that we're not putting all this more stuff into the growth. I feel like for $11,000 to $16,000 a year for one more thing that I have to throw in a development project where instead that's just going to increase our tax revenues overall. They're all.
That kind of comes off direction to CED. Okay. All right, thank you. Yes.
So if we make that change, should we cover the 16,000? Because I'm happy to make the change next week. I don't like to go. That might be not enough time, but then we're talking about a projected $16,000. Or just let it not get funded.
The 16,000 is coming in, the 16,000 is coming in already from someplace? So like, no, like the Streamline thing you just mentioned?
Yeah, somewhere between, I mean, that was the CIP.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, Jim Thompson's project will produce a very small amount based on the commercial portion of the project. That's, as far as I know right now, where, that's it.
So it would make more sense because those deals are already in place, to just keep that as right now.
So the council's clear, because of that commercial element, that is being incorporated into that building. It's circumventing your ordinance, right? That's the word. So instead of having that, the commercial units there, could have additional housing units there, by including commercial, you don't have to make a contribution for the public art. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, it's you make a much smaller contribution because it's just based on the commercial.
Yeah, once you get the numbers, it's code required from the ordinance.
So you might as well bring it back with,
Let's
with
bring it
their
back.
update.
Nope,
I mean, you're not hearing this council say you don't support the park. It's still, I think we're still saying that. It's just what is the funding mechanism? Still haven't really gotten to whether we're keeping this 75 in here or not. I mean, that's the real question on the table. Your comment was about in future years, taking contingency right now, we would see, but how can we get to our decision here as presented?
No, I just wanted to, I'm looking forward to moving on the art on this. I just want council to know or to consider, as we sit here in future years, quantify its impact. And we're looking at developing the best water parts you ever really have a significant. So, I just general, please consider probably.
Motion to approve the full art on that.
Here with us, Samantha Castro, discussion. Here, Don, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Lynn.
Aye.
Murphy.
Now it's time for a vote. After those first three. All right, so, do I need a motion or a? Take the 10-minute pause.
August 26th. Resolution 736 and 2025 for American program. We had our running discussions in July, continuing in August, adoption in August. And since that time, we have had a few changes that will be included partially in our November amendment, but also some of them go forward in 26 and 27. So in your handout, you'll see a one-page summary of what those changes are. For the most part, it's nothing real significant. Some of our big things is different, so things have been adjusted, changes in the The biggest one was that we did have the addition of phase 2 for the flood protection. And a result of that did require us to put back a couple of our projects. The home year fisher map in order to move forward that flood protection. And that primarily is that project number 45, the 1530. Did some work on the parking units. We had budgeted 27 when we did that. And so we're going to move it off 27 from 26. We want to accommodate and get that for the as you know, if you turn you see that 2026 is one of the biggest years that we have had the CIP projects, talking over $81 million in the upcoming year. Of course, a lot of that is the South Road, but there's a lot of really good things. parks, the CIP, or the utility. And other than that, remember, I don't have a lot, I'm not gonna answer questions, but I'm gonna just get out to the plan. And as council knows, every single one of the CIP projects. So even though we got a budget now, based on the actual resolution that is passed, that could generate amendments in the future. Is there a question?
Yes.
I'm looking at the updates. I see 750 for parking ramps. I know we can't predict the future. Do we anticipate that after the parking study, we might end up realizing more funds for this? If we right size our parking fees, that could help fund the parking fund.
Right.
To help. So this could have, this is 27, 26. So I'm not too concerned about it at the moment.
Right.
But I'm just imagining there could be a right sizing of those funds, which could help alleviate some of this.
I would have been able to restructure that all, based on the results of the study. Part of the cost of being themselves, by that government, by leases that, are still in place. Very have expiration dates, got to be consideration. Then there's the properties that.
So this
Middle trust.
could be less. You're right.
As we're looking at the look at the chart, the AOP fund, and goes out over time, that's just, we don't know what the projects are, right? Like,
And some of it is just the timeline.
right, so, but I guess as funds commonly allocated, that comes out of this.
Absolutely.
So we'll probably see more like 6 to 9 million. I thought so, it's the estimate.
Very good. No, that's very good question. Actually, point out, we have the group of projects that are going to be too far. But as we get the chip funds, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but those funds will be reimbursed. We're actually be paying for it out of TIP. And so the good news is, the 18 money that's in the for a year, and we'll put it back in TIP.
Not roll call, please.
Alderperson Mazel. Diane. Smith. Astro. Smith. Murphy.
Where do special capital projects fund funding sources?
So we are back to the special CIP and then our big spreadsheet. Is there anything to continue our conversation? And just like our regular CIP that we just talked about for infrastructure projects, anything that comes out of this fund, to the dollar amount, any of these projects are it is a commitment that we really from a budget standpoint, we need to line level, we feel like we spare so that we don't have to put it in the budget throughout the year.
Yes.
Possible to move this later in the agenda. I believe this is sort of the one that is the most squishy, you're gonna have the most bigger conversation for adjustments made, based on what we've discussed so far. But moving forward, there's other items that are adjusted in some of the later items on the agenda may impact the ones in the projects.
I understand that. I have one. We can come back to all kinds of motions, right? Like we can do information and go back and do. But there is an item in this section that the council really has not gotten clear information on, that's being asked to allocate nearly $2 million for. And I really think we need to have that discussion because remind me, please, I do know that my vote is necessary to pass the budget, but am I allowed to make motions on this?
You would not be able to.
Okay.
You can
I
pass.
should tell them what
Yeah,
it
you
is.
can say what it is you would like.
Yeah.
How it is. Someone else can make.
I want the staff to give us a better idea of what the hell is in the Moline housing fund. We just do not have a good idea. I want their opinions on it, and I have to tell you that I am sitting in the middle, two organizations who may have different viewpoints on this fund, because I represent us on Renew Moline Board, that this is pushed mostly by them. But also we have our own interests as a city, and of course that's where I one. So I really think that we need to have this conversation, if you don't mind. We could talk about that. We can certainly do motions later, but let's do that.
Okay, so housing. Number one priority in our strategic plan and the new direction. One of their top priorities as well, recognizing that their priorities to be in plan. Sense, it makes sense, it's already all part of as a council, I has to be here today, should speak to this as well, but the goal is to create stand-up a housing fund that would function essentially to create housing opportunities for the local developers, right? And provide, I'm assuming it is gap financing of some kind to capitalize projects that are otherwise not possible. They've been working with each other in Cincinnati now for the better part of about 8 months, I think it is. It's been a long time. Where they stood up a program like this years ago. The city was having problems attracting housing. They had dilapidated housing. They had crime issues that they had to deal with, homeless issues they had to deal with. So they created this program 20 years ago. It's been a long time. And all of the major corporations and the local lending institutions became part of this program. Fortunately for them, they have a lot of Fortune 500 companies that Procter & Gamble, the largest. And they have continued to support this. What's it called? Alex, if you could just come up. CDC, yes. They created the program and they built a lot of houses. They reinvigorated many neighborhoods. Light, but crime, homelessness. So what's being suggested by Renew that this housing fund, once established here, could achieve the end of and not be solely dependent on developers make things happen, but they actually steer that conversation to attract development, say, and not have to rely on item. Already a lot of restrictions on the program, which also make it very complicated. Some kind of road deal. Basic thing didn't happen because of government rules. Right?
And lack of investors, let's be real.
Well, I mean, there was, we were.
I think that we have to be honest. Full reality.
Yeah. So, Mary's right, she sits on both courts, so she knows more about it than not. And vice versa, then we share notes. So, Ellen, why don't you speak a little bit about this?
Sure, good morning, I appreciate the opportunity. And for Carol, for you board, and presenting this information. information. I always just learn something. It's always just a couple of things by way of background. We're in Moline zone for strategic plan right now. 7 years since we did one. And so we're really trying to close the organization. When I started at Moline, I had my interview in December of 2017. I was told in no uncertain terms that my job was to repair the relationship with the city. It had been rocky at times, and so I worked very hard to partner with staff to support the city work here, and that has never changed. So we are your partner, we are your independent arm that does things that we can do as we're nimble. As you know, a number of years ago, we created a relationship with Urban Land Institute, which has been fruitful in a variety of ways. Urban Land Institute is a leading thinker of urban development, urban creative ways of doing business, and through that relationship, we got to know this organization called 3CDC, and 3CDC is nothing short of development powerhouse. So I am happy to have Adam the Alter come to do this presentation that Bob and I see. But what we did was first, we wrote the River Edge Development Zone application on your behalf, and we were paid to do that. When we did that, we turned around and said, how can we maximize the speed of the city? And I chose to hire Adam Gelter to help us create creative ways to secure housing, whatever it took. All types of housing, all housing is good housing. But what were the problems? So Mary, you were saying lack of investors. This fund that we're trying to create is not necessarily a primary fund for these projects, but it buys down some of that debt. So you're a very quickly, I'm not a finance person, but Adam is, the notion behind this fund is that it is a subordinate mortgage, a second mortgage that at a much lower rate. And so for investors in this fund, it's generally a 2 to 4% return, which is much less expensive than the prime rate that is 6 7%. Helps fill some of the equity gap in some cases, but it's been used in a variety of ways. So Adam was at 3CDC for 20 years. He started as an intern and rose to become a second in command. And when he realized that he was never going to be a first in command, he started a consulting firm. He is working with, I think now it's up to 6 or 8 cities throughout the country. So St. Paul and Memphis, Lexington, Kentucky, that they have to do exactly this, to raise a fund. We are by far the smallest. But I think the urgency that I feel today, whatever it takes, is really kind of the genesis of we're still at the very beginning, and I think what you'll find with me, and I think Bob knows this, is that I like to under promise and over deliver. So we have 7 basic unions on our board. We have approached all of them and conducted a series of meetings at a came here in person on September 3rd and 4th. We had an initial series of meetings, and we are approaching these banks from 2 different ways. One is basic credit unions. Is one that this is, a secondary loan, you will get a return, but if not, approaching it from the grants meetings. Most of downtown is in a severely distressed or certainly low poverty, census tracts. So we think that there's a lot of reasons for them to invest. We're at the very beginning, but I can tell you that we're being aggressive and smart. And just from a personal standpoint, my first concern is like, what are we doing? But my second concern is, what are we going to do? So I'm equally focused on both of those things. I feel both a burden and, we want to do this right. And so Administrator Butas will certainly be intimately involved in the governance of how the fund works. The way I'm going to describe it very basically, because basically, if the fund is created, the investors in that fund will make up the board that governs the investments. And the investors that are on the board will have a voting portion to their share. So if the city were the largest funder, for example, because we're asking multiple entities, and so it's likely that larger investment like this to the majority of the time, that vote would have a majority, on that investment. So I realize that's very basic, and we always think of long, but that's what we do. Is that helpful, Don?
Yeah, that's only half the story.
Sorry,
That's only half the story. I'd like Mr. Carter to share some more information, and it was just told another day or two ago that Adams are supposed to get a commission off of this. There's a 2.5 or something fee that goes directly to him, and so I think this council needs to understand way more details about what, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that, if information is correct, that's money flowing. Well, I suppose it's based on each project, correct? Yes. So I'm not sure exactly which part of the fund or, goes to that fee. Like, is it city money that's then paying now another consultant, or is it just the big fund? Again, I don't think we have it fully laid out for us. But I also know, I mean, just approved 64 units downtown based on our own staff doing work. We're about to approve more on Tuesday with the dispatch building. And I think Mr. Carr has a clear understanding of what else is on the docket. And we just haven't had a balanced conversation about it. So let me just trade places and ask Mr. Carr.
Yeah, and I can just, for the council, I was asked to appear here, I was not asked to do a presentation, maybe not. This entire conversation is happening this time, which is figuring out how to.
Financing has been fantastic, great idea, how, no issue, I was at the treasurer at all. I think just that underneath the really interesting landscape, look at our studies, understanding what pipeline provides. So part of the big issue is, point are valued resources. And one of the things that we're looking at are if we really did build that further front. Because anything elements of it's simply fit into, and it has, maybe 300 units of housing in the front. And so the completed plan is not able to have that, but we do that, I think, we're focused on our price. So that's recognizing that we have a thing with that, is key for sure. The key focus as we look at our housing delivery, we have right now about 250 units that we look at, coming online with the answer in the air. Some of those, underneath, you can say are the calling in that area. So I would be sensitive of what we're solving. That's one that's the issue of understanding. We talk about market data, talk about our size, talk about digital and the things that deliver. With there is actually a market that is solving some of those what we can say and forward. I think it's just pretty all the context. So knowing what we're solving for, right, resources is valuable. And with previous solutions. So it's not that we have it, but I think that's what we're talking about is that we're going to be solving the entire context of who we are, what pipeline it is, what we consider, levers that should solve, and what we're trying to do today in the festival. I think it's a lot of our conversation with those the right now. Moline has to be a place that they can invest. Sometimes it is shortage of dollars. So if they live more than anything, it's hard to invest in. So that makes sense to have to unpack that a little.
Yeah, I guess the question that comes to my mind is, you bring up numbers of units already in the pipeline, but the renew plan is focused on downtown. But what are the number of units that are in other parts of the city, and should renew focus on other parts of the city if we have a plan for downtown and it's working and it's moving and it's investable? You see what I'm saying? I mean, they've had conversations about whether they should be expanding beyond downtown as well. So do you have an idea of what those needs are there, and would this housing, could it be better put to use if we're talking about other parts of the city?
I think that's the point of that comprehensive understanding citywide. Because there are different levels of investment, right? The downtown has different levels of developers.
We have fees and games, so it's area too, so I think that's a very good point to, so looking at locally what our needs are. But across where the true missing game height occurs, we have one housing authority. And they service a certain amount of population, they have access to Section 8 units, housing. So putting this in the whole paradigm, I think that was the overarching statement, it's the whole paradigm, exactly what our customers are. Process of what we're solving for. And then set forward those targets, so we know we're not skipping something forward to, we hope to solve, but what are the needs, what are the classes, and be very focused on have targets, have targets that what we're solving for. What are the workforce needs? As well, say there's workforce needs, say there's housing needs, really great. What are those? So that we're not approaching from the platform standpoint, but it's a very targeted, it's, can't be notes, made it simply. And this can be about, this can be about a tool, that's not to say that, it's to set that and say, yeah.
Right, and I agree with Ms. Lyons, right, it is hard to be able to do something in real time. You know, it's back to our question of what we talked about earlier, being asked to fund something we don't have the full picture or plan or targets, right? That doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to plan for. But I would hate for us to get into a situation where we don't know where we're headed, we're just funding. And the other thing that I was gonna say is that just big picture, that just gives me pause, even though I can see the benefit to, I've mentioned the nimbleness, I mentioned that on the other day. But Cincinnati is the home of, like, it has the highest concentration of Fortune 500 companies that are willing and able to get behind funds like this, right? That help that city move forward. And like, there's a reason why all the other cities that Mr. Gauss was working with are bigger, right? But we're very small. And I am, based on the JCPenney issue and Bush's inability to find investors, I'm very nervous that it would be a lot of effort in vain because we simply don't have the people who want to be a part of that kind of thing. Because if they wanted to be a part of that thing, why haven't they stepped up already? You see what I'm saying? That's just, I have to say that because I'm very, very nervous.
Yeah.
Gus or somebody.
Yeah, just to address that, I want to be thoughtful on this conversation, construction. And no world should be, if the world comes down, or product comes down to this one investor, when investors said they're going to invest in something that will allow the project, then there's a viability issue. The real issue with that is scale. That was the real issue with that, and the size of scale. So was that a really investable project? That's the whole key. So right now, Bush, that's what you said in the process. With that, it was 30 units, then 60 units, the price, the cost per door was so significant, but that was just not allowable. Getting into this sort of cash price, and that was what our conversation. So what are they doing right now? They're doing the exact right thing. They're trying to take that project and status that. And I'm kind of to do that. So that was a scale issue. That was a structure and organization. But it's that in Rivers Edge, it's a straight tools and it's already. So that investment, I want to be sensitive to this riverfront. We have promised, we have pictures up there. We need to take a certain level. And great fear that we should all have is to do anything to water that down. It's an absolute missed opportunity. If we put something forward that is very popular and has a lot of traction, a lot of interest, we need to build on that. So that's where I'll always defend.
So we just to clarify also, as we approach this housing fund, we know what the fact of the matter is, if you're trying to raise private capital dollars and be dedicated to this, it's very difficult to do without that. So would this be offering you all for? No, it's a perfectly normal part of raising funds like that. Yes, does Adam's relationship with people continue through the governance, the structure, the first 3 deals? Yes, all those things. The other thing I just want to mention is that when we were donated the Jason property, we put it in our parking lot, And it has gotten consistently rolled down. The first was an investor's property there, and we ended up splitting it into the building and working on specific projects because we were not a big enough community to pull investor money out of Chicago, and we were too small to raise $1 million here for that project. It was a struggle. So for a variety of reasons, it didn't go. But, you know, we want to be creative, smart, and nimble, having at it, and following the decisions. And it's still being worked out, so I look forward to actually working with Chris and making sure there's no question about cities and where the confidence is. And then working out the administrative details that this is a solid investment before delivering a single day. A smart song.
If you wanted to weigh in, and good.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Well, it's not cast, it's not good. And it's a map, this is a road map, this is your strategic planning. This is, all special character. This is your strategic plan. This is how we fund all things strategic planning, right? If we're not gonna fund things, then we can or always that. Do something else. Okay, well, Frank, I don't want to be responsible for the strategic plan. I can't deliver on the strategic plan if I don't have funds. So I need this set aside in order to further explore this, because it's really that $2 million is the leverage to get the private sector banks involved. Right? We're not going to support it if I would think. They're not going to support housing, which they have not always done. Let's be honest, they have not done it. Right? We can bring a lot of developers to the table, people with the means. That's why we have projects happen. You know, your project on 6th Avenue is a man with means. Right? Your project on 5th Avenue is a man with means. Not everybody has those needs. And you do have to then rely on those banks. Interest rates are what kill deals all the time. It's this damage to the capital stack that Chris is always trying to close, right? So as we bring the project forward, and I'll just take them all, for example. I mean, that's the elephant in Moline. It's not your job, that's the elephant, because it's basically dead. So if we look at that property, take a look at the redevelopment of that property. Because this development, this owner is going to let it go downhill. Let's say it here right now. He has a model, he has used it nationwide. I'm not surprised Macerich sold it to him specifically to get back at the city. Okay? Pretty frank, right, been honest. He buys it, he lets no investment dollars go into it. The Narrows tried to, we're shot down. Because that would improve it. No, it must appreciate in value. It must fall. Right? Then once he lets it fall apart, we start writing code violations. And he starts to not pay those either. Then he doesn't pay his property taxes. That's his MO. That's the 4 steps of this business model. The 5th step is he sells it for more than he paid for it. The city's not ready to see him bond, and they waive all the penalties and the back taxes that pays. There it is. That's what we're dealing with. We need to have some way to redevelop that property. You're going to do your comprehensive plan. Some of you have heard me. Go in there, rezone that property, make it multi-use, get rid of his commercial zoning on his property, and force his hand. You're going to have that opportunity. This is not a joke. It's not that matter. Your constituents talk about that all the time, right? And they're going to continue to. Oh, and I missed one part of it. The other element is he sells off all the outlots, step 1. Guess what's happening? He's selling off all the outlots. So this guy is doing exactly what he did in West Dundee, what he did out of 2 malls in Pennsylvania. I'll send you the video that I found late one night, and it'll just wake you up. I'm not sending it to you in the section, but not gonna sit here and pretend that I don't need resources to tackle big projects, big problems. That's where we're at. We need partners at the table. That's where we are. I'm ready to reveal how the hell we go. As I told Alex, I said, I go, committing money is one thing, because it's a benchmark to sit here, doesn't mean we're spending. But it's how it operates, how it functions, the structure. That's the information that we need to put together. Just, it's not there yet, but in 2027, we will. So this is kind of like big 26, 27. And then the new board, like this board, has to make a decision. Right? They decide not to buy in, so then we walk away. If they do decide to buy in, we need to be serious about what we want to do about it.
Two questions slash statement. Alex, if this is operating as a low interest secondary fund, if nationally interest rates drop, that kind of makes this less of a need. Is that accurate? Because if we're offering 3-4% and nationally there are 2, then we can't go down to 1. Listen, and Jerome Powell gets fired, anything's possible, right? So it's just, it kind of, we have to reevaluate at that point, the necessity, or is it still just, am I doing the math wrong here?
No, I think it's just so early that, one of the things I've learned from Adam is that we have certain needs and requirements that their investors and what we're learning in our early discussions with, exit ideas here is that they just have it. And so the good news is we tailor the structure to what their needs are to make sure that but beyond sort of speculating about what's going to happen with interest rates,
That's fair. The other point is that, I feel this is a good investment, even if this doesn't happen. The city can, and this is something I've spoken to some of you about, we could use that money to directly build housing ourselves, whether it is small lots, duplexes, infill, and then sell it, turn around and sell it, choose who we sell it to, lose very little money. And then our property tax, sales tax, usage fees all go up as a result. And then we just roll over and do it again. So this could be seed money for a program like that, where we are the primary investors in real estate, investors or constructors, and then selling, not being our own. So I think regardless of how we use this money, it is a good earmark fund going forward. So I also supported being on.
That's a little technical side of that policy. The approving it in place as it is, truthfully is just everything there. No money is actually eligible to be dispersed without another.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, because we're setting that here to say, we think we want to identify this problem, that's where it goes. But the program has to be finished, and I totally get it. This isn't like the off the shoulder where we think it's gonna be a thing, we can maybe go find $2 million, that's not something we can just go buy. But I do appreciate, even if it's a hard time to do, getting some more insights into what it is, because that was such a big question. From the policy standpoint, everything we're talking about makes a lot of sense. We want to talk about a public-private partnership and how we build those things out and how we do that across the city, in downtown, at our riverfront. And I've not felt like we've had the tool getting in place. This feels like it's all through on that one, there's steps before I'll be happy with it. But the worst case is if we decide it's not viable or the project's not working, if that's where it comes back to, then we move into an alternative and we still have that option on the table. I next thing you know, we work with any of my consultants or any of the people that bring in and they have to pay them. So that to me is not a major concern. Of course, we don't know what that is and how it'll turn out. Overall, I just think this is a good piece to.
I guess the remaining question then is sort of this 1 million and then 500 and 500. That's not a huge chunk taken out of funds that would go to the riverfront all at one time. It's a steady resort. So is it your opinion that we're still building up what we need for the riverfront, even if we siphon this slowly in the next few years, given that it wouldn't become active for at least 2 years?
But we still got over 10-year period, over $15 million for 15 years. And we also want to talk about, what's happening in the riverfront, maybe even leverage some of those remaining for dollars. Jumpstart, like in the local, bonding, so all of a sudden we have security coming. I think that's down, if we get to that point, we still have adequate dollars to either pay cash or leverage it and not.
That's very helpful, because I think the level of unease, whether it's from a professional or from an elected official, has to be mitigated somehow. That helps me a little bit. The idea that the monies could go to any other form of housing development also eases unease for me a little bit. And I appreciate the chance to have that conversation, because it's very difficult to be hearing things from multiple sides and trying to find a path forward that doesn't overly burden our residents with our tax rate, right? Because this is going into what we're eventually doing.
Just one thought too, because again, it's a housing fund, but you can look at the picture of that. I would envision you would want to see those housing developments get built on. They are significant, right? 5 stories over 1 story residential, 1 story parking. None of those buildings are inexpensive. Those are really expensive buildings. Then you put a parking structure because of our form-based code, what we've done, everything has to self-park. You're gonna have residential on the ground, commercial ground, parking inside, and you're gonna have residential above that. This fund could help to work for attractive developers. Would that be fair statement, President?
Thank you for that information. That's really clear.
I just want to repeat what I said. My initial unease was with understanding the feasibility of the plan. But I also understand that we all know we don't get feasibility. So it's just worth repeating that this is an allocation.
That's all it is.
And right now, it's something that we're exploring as well. That's not.
It's just a little fun.
So I look forward to that.
Yeah. Sure else.
One last piece of thinking about concerns about projects that we saw. And I had concerns with another project could go into China. The fund isn't intended to go after one project, right? It's understanding that there will be a number of projects, and that one I think face challenges to locked in based on circumstances. Very specific. This is much less involved. Concerns about it, elected employee ready to keep a project.
So would you still like to delay this particular motion?
It's a, Your Honor, just particularly just the 1 million we're talking about, or the entire.
This is the multi-fund fund and allocate money as presented from special skits. It's not voting on how it's gonna work, it's just, I mean, I'll take a motion if you want to also entertain it.
Just for the shares, yeah. we are just allowing anything that's spent, you know, about
You have to have higher structure right back. An operating plan, business plan, the organizational structure, of the board, who's on that board, all of that has to be back. Properly established.
also the fees.
But yeah, all that comes back.
There are motion to establish the Moline Housing Fund and allocate seed money as. Second.
Discussion, thank you. If there's nothing further, roll call.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy. Motion passes. Thank you both for your expertise. And you.
That's you. Is it for the word?
Yes.
If you wanted to ask us, we could either answer a question to the chair or you know, motion to.
Anything that is on the agenda, or even voted on, you can revisit that during this meeting. If you choose to do that, you would just simply make a motion and reconsider. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'd like to take the next two items and instead to leave that until after.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, I was misunderstanding your question. Yeah, you can, in fact, if this is a committee of the whole, if the mayor wants to simply do that and no one objects, then.
I think I will do that if you don't object, because they are, I understand what you're getting at, especially with the reserves and it's better to upgrade everything else. So after number 21 is. We'll move to park funds.
Thank you. We briefly reviewed this on Tuesday in the PowerPoint. Fund equity for the first 2028. There's a slight drawdown in fund balances, but it's mainly in city policy at 21.79%. I took a little bit of background on Parks Fund, and I actually started on the board, which crazy that it's been 6 years. The Parks Fund actually only had 3.5% of taxes. There wasn't a lot, basically, availability to do capital projects, operating, and so this council primarily has done a lot to help establish that fund. The citizen survey that came out, very, very important. And the main source of revenue for this fund is property taxes, and that is part of the levy. This year it's showing as a 3% increase. Did you know that $100,000 budget as well as $6 million looking into the idea. So it's, when we talk about that change in operating expenditure citywide, part of the budget also goes to keeping their operating expenditures at the low point. They do have salary increases, but the Parks Fund right now also gets transferred in from the general fund. It's been flat for the last couple of years, but it is supporting the next percent. Try to move forward on the master plan. We had an annual transfer in as well for state from CIP, and that helps support some of the streets like the cemetery and down the riverside. There's been a lot of improvements in the last few years. And those funds can take care of that. And I'm trying to think what else. I mean, we're gonna talk about all the projects, or let's see a couple more slides down for me. Next 3 years. And we did kind of something out of $1 million each year. I know Parks is working on that tree bank program that has been a high priority of So a couple years ago, in the last year or the current year that we're in, it's almost 250 trees here that. So, and with that, I think I don't really have much else. It is functioning very, very well.
Now,
I don't recall.
who the heck I was talking to? It could have been the governor yesterday. It could have been somebody else from here. But they asked me if we were looking at HUSLAC grants for the riverfront. And I thought to myself, how did you get enough? Someone, they told me they had gotten like $1 million or something.
So that's land acquisition, can go up to 1.2 million.
So with that one was
No, and then if you were talking to anyone in like the suburbs of Chicago, if they're over a certain population, they can go for higher. But we fall into a $600,000 category.
I thought, yeah. Okay, thank you. I was like,
Yeah, 1.2 they can go up to.
Well, following up with that, I mean, when the riverfront project is going forward, we certainly consider that as part of that.
Absolutely, you could go for
Like, I mean, that's probably going to be a bigger project than.
yeah, definitely could go for. And since we're a distressed community, we don't have to have a match, but it does look better on paper. That's why when I brought it forward, we did like a 10% match, which is mostly staff time and equipment time, not actually. Well, no, we're not buying anything. We already have. So,
As I said at the beginning of the meeting, this is a place in tax money where you probably do probably take $50,000 at this point. Stick to that recommendation. I don't think it'll have a harmful effect on the operation. Same with Whole Foods and Library. Same with. Sorry. I've been good to both.
is there a hand somewhere?
Bob, if we were to do that, would you recommend just receiving the transfer from the general fund? By X amount?
Or do you mean this bullet number 2, property tax out?
No, I'm looking at the part, line that would be started. 168, yeah. It has sources from the general fund and CIP. Like, would that be the lever to pull to reduce? I mean, I don't just want to say, hey, reduce it by 50,000, figure out where.
I mean, yeah. Carol, I think that's.
You know, I understand $1 million, if historically was just going to be used for capital, that $1 million transferring from the general equity, I should say that. Is there a combination of operating and general? But the property tax levy, if you were looking at ways to reduce that levy rate, but that is up above on that very.
The 3 million for the 2014.
That would be.
Yeah, and that's basically $100 million.
Yeah, so you're gonna.
Take a half of the.
So that's bullet point 2. If you were to make a motion to reduce something by $15,000, it would be that.
Okay.
Yes, Mr.
That's how we do it too, right? It's just reduce it by.
No, no, what we got, lower, yeah. Instead of having to go up 100,000, but go up 50, take 50. Do it back.
I certainly understand that role of the there. My concern with this to amend it. We can take away that 3% increase, but we also know that wage increases are exceeded by all. Right, we know that all costs are going up. And I think we have started to draw a very fine line with part of the line where appropriated. This is your budget, this is what it is. I think that would bring the other one critical to say, never mind, we told you to look within your needs, now we should. I think if we establish those, work that into that hesitance to make any change.
I asked this, the fact that would have on your budget, or would there be certain things that you have to cut back or projects that you could do because of that?
I mean,
Like
the biggest request that we had was 10% increase in seasonal staff. In the last 10 years, our hours for seasonal staff have not increased, but I listed as a budget request 22 separate things that we now do on top of our normal operations for park maintenance. So I requested 10% there. The rest is capital minus staff. Say that again.
Can you give examples of that additional work in?
The landscaping downtown, the new trail, I-74, we're doing, more tree work, more right of way. I don't have that list in front of me, but I can pull it up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I heard Mr. Vitas say that 50K could be, if we reduced it, could be covered by your reserve. So technically, you wouldn't have to.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
if 50,000 is cut, then we'll plan for it.
Exactly.
On the bottom, you see it right there. There's
Until 2020.
no. Only suggesting in the health is this budget and take that buddy to work for all numbers. What do you know?
I think it's great.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Can I share that list?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sure. So we had, calling the new Western Illinois property, like that downtown parcel, that Western was looking to do like some childcare, portion of it. We have, taking care of, the bike path landscaping, the Mississippi River to Rock River, landscaping up the roundabouts, landscaping at the new city services center, McManus Pump and landscaping, the windmill property next to Public Works, landscaping around the new, signs at 15th Street, 19th Street, City Hall parking lot, landscaping around the Midtown parking ramp, added landscaping to the Riverside, John Deere Hillside project, bathroom cleaning and playground inspection of O'Brien Park, watering additional 225 trees per year, special event management increased expectations from the police department to parks and recreation events, and then installing of River Drive flags, that was originally done by Moline, is now moved done by Parker.
So I hear Mr. Schmidt's, commentary, deciding not to. Critical, what have you, but we are asking, we know that our residents felt that. And I think $50,000 from the reserve is a justifiable type thing for a year. That's my personal. I get to make motions. Mr. Shimmy.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the property tax allocation, parks funds, $3,407,950.
Motion by Timmy and seconded by Finch. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Board Person Razak. Timian.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Smith.
6 hours, 1 day. Motion passes. We have still a motion, passes. Budget item. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I need a motion to pass the park, but all park funds as in. Motion to approve all park funds. As That is, like, you want to be it. Sure.
Motion to approve all park funds as
Motion by Finch, seconded by Rosa. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak.
I'll,
Timian.
Aye.
Finch. Hill.
Aye.
Castro. Smith. Harvey.
Passes. Thank you. We move to number 15. Library.
In favor, can you touch base on them? On Tuesday here. Right now, library is fully funded. It includes increased maintenance for the library garden that is got completed. And the ending fund balance in 2028 totals 22.55% of all. Some of the highlights from PowerPoint the other night, they are including about a 10.7% increase allocation for materials for patients or for patrons. I should say it's an increase at 10.7% of their operating budget, which will towards materials. This will be the second payment from the outreach plan. And I think that is a total of about $242,000. As you know, for the second year, but as we move into 2027, there's a full possibly be hiring a local person to man that name. They wanted to let Brian speak to it. They were wanting to take this first year to see how great of a need or if they're able to use existing staff for that name. So they just kind of know the first year of the trial. Otherwise, everything was fully funded, like I say, we've got extra money in there for seasonal help to make it in our group, and it's working very well. And I should say too, they've got, is it your 20, how many years, 20 years?
next year will be 20 years.
20
in
years.
this building.
And so we've got a little bit of extra money coming in for some new furniture and chairs, a little bit of capital. But other than that, it's very flat.
Same situation.
Your recommendation, with that recommendation, so, in order to get to the $10 annual reduction, option 3, you have a levy drop 1.6785. The other previous changes that would go in 75,000 up to 69,000. 6 to make that happen. Short 94,000.
That's option 4.
That would be option. That's option 3. Or take a small bites.
Yeah, right. I only have so far 9 to 8 has been detailed.
I have 50,000 lift shelter,
Right, that's
25,000 USA celebration, 50,000 to whatever, something like that.
okay. The issue remains, are we gonna do the same thing? Is there a motion to accept his recommendation if you also see that's, but and back funded service?
I made the motion, simple one, but I think some piece important. As I just been exact parks is around and so on all the I thought we saw that people trying to do some that over there.
Just trying to get.
Although I don't, is it possible to send in a third edition of the less than 50% in the language? Still, or do we put another? Have a number?
We
I'm taking bites. You know, so, yeah.
No, as a procedural standpoint,
Yeah, you have to have a specific number, you can't just go with a percentage.
Well, and his recommendation is a number. So, is there a motion?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the property tax allocation at $3,275,681, which is $25,000 less than presented.
Say that again.
$3,275,681.
That can't be right.
Yeah, I can tell, is, Your Honor, $25,000. I can give you a number. I'll wait for. We just do reduction.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving us specific numbers that if someone else can do the math better than you, they can point to the guy.
okay, that's what I was gonna ask you. Yeah.
$3,253,000.
Okay, so are we clear on what the motion is? Amend it down by 25K. Is there a second? Second by Finch. Discussion.
And the reason it shows this in the is because the library is such a tight budget for reserves. The excess of 50,000, I don't know. Meeting that full amount. I know we will have contingency and other funds to cover stock if needed, but I want to leave some.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil. Castro. Schmidt. Murphy.
That amendment passes 6-1. So we need a motion to approve the library budget. I mean, it's just motion to approve. Alright, that's motion by Finch, second by Razak. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy.
Motion passes. Alright, so just to review at this point, making sure our numbers are right, in case Mr. Brown teacher. 50 on line 8, 50 on park, 25 America, 150, 25 for a total of 100. Thank you. And then the goal to get to the 100, just as a reminder,
269.
269, 226.
6 for option 3, option 4 is $339.
Okay, we're on to page 3. Number 16, new personnel. Yeah, we need to recess for executive session. Or not recess,
No,
we
recess.
go into executive session first before we have this first.
Okay, Your Honor, I make a motion that the council convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion. Appointment, compensation, discipline, performance, and dismissal of specific issues 5 ILSCS 2020/2 C.
Second.
Murphy, second by Timian, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Schmidt. Murphy.
All right, thank you. Sorry, those staff that were meant to stay, can stay, those that need to leave, exactly. Hang on, lobby.
Request that came in, development program assistant towards, Daniel Davies, is the position that we're hiring for that, but we need to authorize the budget. The city services building, as you know, with that still left on hold, waiting outcome of what we're doing with City Hall and that building. Properties. Traffic operations coordinator, I absolutely concur with this one. I know that for all speak to that, we have one person managing over 100, we have all the folks that are all ICAP systems. things constantly out and out. No fault. Plus you only want to have one person doing it because otherwise we get contract that out. We contract that out. Library staff for the mobile van, I think they're talk about that, park fund, so that's actually built by the staff during this first year, once the van's actually in place, with the arrival of the back, right? So the park right? To the Director of Utilities, strongly encouraging this based on the need to have a succession plan in place in utilities as we do in all our departments. So it's the same need that we would feel that would be funded through enterprise itself, on a tax level. Then we had, I believe it was one more equipment operator, which we had discussions about that in the past, where that's all contracted right now. It's great, that would be very hard to cemeteries rather. And, but there's an offsetting saving by hiring somebody versus actually contracting somebody else. So in essence, we're looking at those positions being approved for next year. And you can see the seasonal that's up there. Both streets and library park maintenance. So you can see that the reclassification for the experienced analyst, opening reclass down. So all holds. Position 400, like 400,000.
Motion to approve personnel.
Motion by Schmidt, second by Castro. Discussion. I feel like we've done a good job over the last few years of really keeping it like one position at a time. It's sort of unfortunate that we for all the years we have that kind of habit in a sense, but I understand the need. Nothing further, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak.
Aye.
Finn. Aye. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Schmidt.
Aye.
Murphy.
General fund.
Before we do, I'm just gonna show you one little. Interesting chart in my personnel. There's some things that are actually bringing up 425,000. This whole chart shows that just over the last 4 years, 21 and 25, that we had so many open positions that are gotten filled that we are getting to be a younger workforce. So, I mean, it's going to be expected, but just give us that red line there, that's where it was in 2021. It's getting not going through, under 40. Stay with us for a while. Just an interesting information. Anyone general. And we're going to start with the very first page. And the general fund is the city's main operating fund. We're going to go through all departments and everything. But if we look at the history on that very first page, we'll look very closely. We always look at this fund balance. This is one of the key, especially when you fire station that we prior to that. We want to continue to maintain very carefully commitment. Very important to keep those balances within policy. And if we look at 25 years, and the anticipation we're looking at for amendments coming back to you now in November, we anticipate to be ending the year, that very bottom row, with an ending fund balance of 25.27%. So on the top side of our policy, again, there may be some funds left over from the the number percent, our revenues are pretty much. So any savings, and any excess funds that might occur will be because of operating budgets. Just really well, it's been the last 3 weeks, so I feel, in very good shape here, in this third week of the year. As we move into 26, that fund balance drops down a teeny bit, down to 22.84, and then it's working itself back up. It's just the time to put some of the expenditures we're coming on into some of the revenues. As we touch base, we anticipate some of the revenues to be really flat with our. This fund right now is functioning very, very well. The next page, this is a snapshot of all the departments that are within the general fund. We talked about parks and library separate. That's because they have their own separate funds. Majority of the cities paid through the general fund. We've got police and fire, all of our traffic divisions, general fund, which includes our city administrator, legal, finance, HR, all of our CED, community development, and then public works and all of our street projects. So a lot of money goes through this fund. If you look down the road for 2025, we anticipate that the total expenditures in the general fund for 2025 are $50,718,000. If we move forward into 2026, right over the road, we anticipate total expenditures to go up 52,803,000. Overall, in that budget, it's only a 2.1% increase. That's the salaries and everything else. And as you know, we also budget down for vacancies, so we can push down, we don't over budget. Push down, we think it has an average vacancy rate. So it is a very, very high budget. If we go to the next slide here on the general fund, we touched on this on Tuesday as well. The biggest, and there's several pieces to the pie of the public income. It's the big red pie there for, we've got fire, police, and then all of your other public safety, which includes the inspections. That makes us 68.5% of the budget for the general fund. So that's always been a high priority. Then we continue to stay on the board of our and 15% is the admin, legal, HR, everything. And that's pretty steady year over year. I always like to kind of show this slide here. Again, this is kind of the driver on our fund balance policy. If we look at those double red bars on the bottom chart, that is the gap there for that 20 to 25%. It is actually 72 to 90 days of reserves that we absolutely need. As you know, some of our revenues don't come in all at once, but we have to continue to pay for bills throughout the year. And as you know, property taxes, they come at the tail end of the year. So with roughly now, some higher pension funds, we have to be able to cash flow that from our general fund reserves. So it actually dips down low 20% during the year until we get after those higher levels. It will go up in the top. You can see, it's just kind of showing that chart down the road, that our fund balances are right on target. I really wanted to get ahead on one thing before I get to the next one. We touched on this on Tuesday. Go to PowerPoint. PDF is page 204. I just want to.
Before you. This is the, I mean, all the line on the difference. The top, when you went to the top. The days operating. Yeah. So some of us in this room remember getting accused of tax and reporting. Right? But you show here, in all those years, 22 and previously, much higher percentages of the reserve, correct? So we brought it down, as we said.
And that is the chart down below as well, it's the blue players. They work higher and they will absolutely come down. So we're kind of saying that when you hit that 25% mark, we need to allocate. But I wanted to mention on this other chart was our in tip fund that's supported by the general fund. Here, this chart I really think sticks to them. We're going to talk about it more. It is wonderful. These are the advances that are being taken out of the general fund. And in 2026, you'll see that bar moving up. And it peaks right now at 10,067,000 in 2026. And then you are seeing it's a pretty steady decline every single year. If that does indeed hold true, we're coming on forward, we will have some additional revenues in the near future. So that when we go to budget, hopefully we can change it. But we think everybody knew that, but right now, the future is very high. There's nothing for sure. In magnitude, our major revenue streams, I kind of put citywide on these the other night, but our top 10 revenues in the general fund, just like they are on the citywide, a very steady revenue stream. And we are well diversified. Our top 10 does make up about 85% in this fund. The remaining 15% is very well diversified. They're pretty steady year over year. Questions on that one? And a chart. So as we look going on down through these bullet points on the agenda, part of what the general fund pays, like they mentioned, is the police and fire retirement. And for 2026, these are the levied amounts, $4,870,000 is going to our annual contribution. If you want to see more on the police and fire pension funds, you can start back on page 435, and I realized we haven't covered this. When you continue this year, and this year, with the one interesting chart, and then there. I wish I would change this chart. And as it peaks there in the year 2021, that's the year prior to pension obligation. So if you just kind of imagine the line going out, okay, from that top line, that's where we were at. We haven't been issuing bonds with the team. We're very issuing pension obligation bonds are annual. And so we see that last 5 years, or like this, every single year. It's been a very good decision. Long term, if you were looking at line up, that's the way that we made that decision. They look at the actual market.
Carol, would it be fair to say that when you look at this chart, see the $10 million, you know, see the increase going over 10 million to 26, and probably related, I would assume, to 6 additional firefighters being
Oh, yes,
brought
it
on,
is.
growing the size of the department. Because of the need. So, so you know why across the.
The other thing is they also do investment returns from the pool, and the state manages that now. And it just happened that this year they took over the plan, markets everywhere, it wasn't just Michigan. Everything kind of took a dive, but we're coming back, it's been positive. With our actuarial reports, you know, the funding on the annual basis, we will knit, we will knit. Moving on to the general fund, it should make the. We've got transfers for very standard of 2,350,000. We talked earlier about parks, the special events, public safety equipment, this is an annual amount they fund. And our special CIP fund, 987,000, that is the levy. If the levy goes down, that transfer out to separate CIP. We've got our public arts for 75,000, and a little bit of parking revenue that comes in that we transfer to our parking grant fund, about 27,000. I did mention we put this budget together as the next bullet. Making positions in this fund, it's averaging about 5%. So we are budgeting for that, we've actually decreased salaries. And with capital equipment in this one this year, we are spending about 150,000 and it this year, and it is what's still in the camera network system. And then we've already talked about the mayor's contingency. Our mayor's contingency. It's really but I have some thoughts. I did some homework. Okay. I don't know if my colleagues have, but if we, in the interest of not being hypocrites, take a hit to our own contingency of 100,000, and we decrease the city administrator's contingency by 25,000. That helps us meet our goal for option 3. Okay, perfect. If we take a bigger hit, and like I did the math here, so the option 4, the difference between option 4 and option 3 is 69,915. We could literally reduce our own council contingency by $74,000 and hit option 4. Unless I have done anything. And I'm really putting that out there because look at how much we didn't do this year. 575K. I don't think that we need 400K to sit on. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I understand that, it is the one piece of the trade for an emergency that is easy to access, finances have to look for it. We have that usually before. And frankly, when we don't use it like this, that's how we're going to fund against other reductions and those things. I mean, it rolls forward to allow that saving going forward without tying our hands on it.
I understand that. I understand why, and I knew you would say that. But also, when we used it, I think that was before we had the special CIP. And if we needed 100,000 or 170,000 somewhere for emergencies, I'm sure we could get it out of the special CIP. Correct. That is such a small number. That's going to make an actual big difference. Okay. Granted, we're not able to fully cut taxes for people, but we're keeping. If we can fund option 4 that easily, then why wouldn't we prevent them from going $100? But it's really about, are we gonna hypocrite? Gotta be willing to cut on ourselves anyway.
And I guess, I think, you know, some book, at the end of the year, last year, we put into the special. I think I'm much more comfortable saying, buy ourselves a parachute, and we don't use the parachute, then pass it on. Right, we're not hoarding it, we're not holding the bags. It is, and we can talk about a reduction of perspective, cutting it down. We're ultimately going to use it that in something.
So you're suggesting if I might, the 575 there, popping into the specialty IP, that you find the balance of this tax levy there, when you under $19,000.
No,
I'm saying
your
budget.
You did.
I did look at that because that's already accounted for, like, and we are, at that point, we know we have these large scale projects, large pieces. My biggest fear is if we set ourselves up and say, well, if an emergency happens, pull it back, CIP. Now we've got our $15 million one check, theoretically, because it allows us to have a different connection with that. Whereas if something crosses the threshold of the cost, we set aside an account, then it very clearly crosses over into taking away those priorities. If we say we're just going to use it as council contingency, then I think we could lose track of it very easily and start spending it more. So that's why I think it's important to people. Well, I'm saying, like, if we had a major possibility.
Oh, I'm just saying that I'm saying that is a pathway, and if we're trying to make it work, actually make options for work, I think it's really hard to tell our residents, oh, we can go for option 4. That's me personally. I know all y'all might be comfortable with the part middle ground option 3, but anyway. Mr. King.
I just want to clarify that the 575 is not unspent contingency. It is unspent money after.
Unspent.
So, I mean, we're kind of throwing the two around like they're the same thing. And I think the use case is very different. Unspent contingency is one thing, and spent funds. It's still unspent. But, right, yeah.
I don't know, so what I originally said was here, we could reduce I'm not saying get rid of our contingency, I'm just saying let's make it a little less this year. If you could go down 100K there and 25K in the city administrator contingency and meet option 3. You could also go down another 70 in the council contingency, so bring it down 170K. So then we still have cheaper. And we cross over the threshold to the option. Does anyone check that? I believe I did it right though. I subtracted the difference between 4 and 3, that's 69,915. And knowing already that we had 125. That we were at 150, subtract 150 from the 269, 226 we need to get to. The 125, the original idea gets us there, another 70 gets us there.
Yeah, I made a motion to reduce the council contingency by $100,000 and $25,000 over the 6.
So that was Schmidt and Rozak. Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
I think it's important to spend the contingency and think where it is, but I also agree from a scale perspective, it does keep being there. You do have other backlogs and actions. So reduction. That's about as far as reductions I'm comfortable with, so I made that motion straightforward. I also think from the overall perspective, I'm still happy to reduce the overall, whatever we go through and we go out today, I think we can find ourselves in a position to say, oh, now we're not talking about a huge chunk out of it, but we can pull back a little bit on the CIP fund out of the property tax that we pick up that last little bit of difference. If we don't find the rest, if we find the rest, great, then we can actually afford the distraction, that's not what we do. I just thought that's important to show, because I know I'm pushing the low tax levy and then not going along with some of the reductions, and that's the why, it's needed before sense to reduce that increase. This makes sense, at scale.
Yes.
So just clarification, if there was another thought to reduce it by 170, would that require, would you vote for this now and then have to vote that, or?
I think you could then make another amendment and say, I would like to take the council contingency, instead of reduce it another 7. You could add on, but you're, in a sense, you're saying go with option 3 via this route by the motion that's presented. So you can either, correct me if I'm wrong, you can either not vote on this and then introduce a different motion, or vote on this and introduce a different motion if you're trying to get. That answers the question.
There's my love agree.
Yes.
I just want to also make sure that we're talking about 2 different things. We talked about the option 3 versus option 4 in this vote, but you're proposing this as a path to that.
Yes.
There are other paths to that. And I want to take a different path to option 4. But that's the, I just want to make sure that you understand they are separate votes.
Ask you guys to share what that path is, because I don't see many more bullet points where I would be comfortable pulling back dollars.
Well, so we've already pulled back $150,000.
Yes.
This is going to be an additional $125,000, which,
You need 64,000.
right, I was more than happy to take 200,000 out of the road portion of that CIP, out of the increase. But I knew we were going to find other paths to reduce that number, so we take 64,000 out of that, and that's been where I say from the beginning. Is
So, okay,
making
so
up the
you're-
difference here out of what's back there. And at 64,000, that's our expected amount.
But it looks like it, it's not.
Point of order, should we vote on the motion? No, I think that that's actually a relevant issue. That's overall.
But the deal is, correct me if I'm wrong, we did already vote on the road piece. That has not been.
The property tax levy, so this the amount of the special CIP.
Right.
Network,
When you take that down,
that's
that's what he suggested.
yes,
No,
We just were discussing.
which is why I haven't moved it, and we see what we would be arguing about. Or not, or.
Oh, I see, thank you very much. All right, so just so we're clear, there is a motion on the table to reduce the contingencies in council and city administrator by 125,000. That's not the exact wording. And that is one pathway to get us closer. That gets us to option 3 for the property tax levy. And if there's a suggestion that there's another way to get to option 4. Keep in mind, these are also still amendable. Make sense? Yes.
trying to get it to option 4, probably can't. Before we take that stuff. I mean, really.
I will say what I just said a few minutes ago. I think it's really hard to go to your community and say you had a pathway to option 4 and you didn't. I think that's the perception is reality. Reality is reality.
I agree. Or without. Or maybe I think that we could think something additional on that.
All right, so are we ready to vote on Schmidt's amendment, which is 100 out of, 100 out of council contingency and 25 out of city administrator contingency.
So if I want to make, I would like to motion to do the one, except, the additional, do I do that now or after?
You're wanting to amend the amendment? It's a motion, not amend. It's a motion. Yeah, you can amend an amendment. You cannot go any further than an amendment to an amendment. So if you wanted to move that.
You are allowed to amend.
So I would make motion, I would like to make a motion right now to amend the amendment to reduce,
It's just a
motion.
Oh, no, it is an amendment.
This is an amendment.
Yeah.
Please,
Yeah, he's trying to amend the as presented piece, so yours is an amendment to.
I would like to amend the amendment
Yes.
to reduce the council contingency by 100 and it's 107. I said we could work out.
164. What do you think?
Was there a second?
Sorry.
Okay, second by Vicky. Right, so now we have discussion on.
Can I ask this for clarity? You said council 70, there's still.
I apologize, we still the same.
Right.
The administrator minutes stayed the same. Just wanted to make sure that I understood what we're asking.
Oh. I don't know.
Somebody read it back,
I don't know what you're doing. Okay,
Let's read this all back.
yes, this is what it is, where the amendment to the amendment is to reduce the council contingency by $170,000, which would bring the council contingency to $230,000. And to reduce the city administrator contingency by $25,000 and bring it to $70,000.
So total $195,000 total reduction.
Out of five. Okay, yes.
No, it's not, sorry.
Oh, yeah, there's not a second. Yes, there was. There was a second. Yeah. Okay.
I believe options on the list, when we looked at that house contingency, we walked in the end of the year with 170,000. And that was 5 years ago, if you look at what that would cost now, it would exceed 230 probably with the inflation we face. I agree with a cutback. It's just going too far for giving us the security we need. When the money would be right, going to scale funded.
So is this 230? So 400 down to 230. Does that include the 75 for Hertz? Or is that taken out after that we validated?
Next second time.
So, I don't understand the answer. It's before, okay. So then we have to also reduce 75. Taking us down to 75. 165, okay, that's scary.
And well, it's a real discuss not putting the arts in that.
You did right.
It's go.
It wasn't.
But for 26, we would then have 165 if we fund the arts. With this.
Okay, yes, Mr. Duma.
And this kind of private food. Especially office in 70,000 more than the office. One in the top.
Correct, yeah, this is a total concept.
That's my priority. We have to do that now. I think, yeah, but let's see that I need
Yeah.
We think that this can be made from something 60,000.
That's what I said a couple of minutes ago, is I don't think, I mean, he thinks you can get it out of the special CIP. I mean, the PCI index, certain money for roads. I was leaving it alone because I'd rather take it out of us than what goes to the resident and see the. And there could be other places, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of other bullet points of funds that it makes sense to reduce. That's why I suggested to you this particular route. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also remember that one of the reasons we have not had to use our council contingency is because our staff has done a very good job of finding that money elsewhere when new things have come for us. Many times it comes with years, well, we found it a little bit left in this fund, a little bit left in this fund. But that is not a guarantee. And I think the more we chip away at those backstops, that's what puts us in a situation where down the road, we have to turn around and huge increase on property tax bill, or a huge increase in another tax. I think there is something to be said for giving ourselves a parachute, which allows us to absorb those issues and the problems.
All right, so there's no further comment on the amendment. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Razzak.
Aye.
Timian. Finch. Aye. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Aye. Schmidt. Murphy. Aye.
The amendment passes 5-2.
We'll still have to go on there.
Right, as amended. That's where we're at right now. Correct. Everything else, or did you get, yeah, you got all the way through the next one. All of them. Yeah, anything else? General fund? Yes.
Just as I have a question, but should we vote on the amendment before we get back to the general funds?
Yes, because the amendment, what you just voted on, changed the amount cut from the council contingency. However, there was nothing addressing the amount cut from the administrator contingency in that amendment. We go back to the original amendment.
Yeah, she said.
She wasn't changing.
Oh, right, so we have to go to the.
So you still have to vote on
Thank you, I understand what you're
that,
saying.
the administrator contingency and the amendment.
No, that's, I have a question after we go on this. As a.
Alright, so now we're to a motion that says, we're gonna reduce the council contingency by 170,000 and reduce the city administrator contingency by 20. And just so you know, if I add those numbers to our 150, please somebody double check here, that puts us at 345,000. And that's over what you said we needed to do to get to 50%. So there's still some adjusting to do to get to this exact 339 number. Like, you know, we can recorrect that. Now, these are.
That might be what Alderperson Timian was thinking about after the vote on the amendment.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. Yep. Motion.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, so if there's nothing further, we'll do a roll call on this vote as on this motion as amended.
This is still on, this is going back to Schmidt's.
Okay, on this amendment. Yeah, we're back to Schmidt's amendment. Thank you. As amended. Alright, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Timian.
Nay.
Finch. McNeil. Castro.
Schmidt,
Yay.
Murphy.
Aye.
All right, that amendment passes 5-2. So we're now back to our motion to approve a general fund as amended. Yes, and you.
Bob, can you, explain, what is the 161,000 for Green Point division that's on here? Page 120. I don't know the tab.
You can pull that up.
Mayor, no. Those two have been for us.
Right, should we write? Oh,
It's just, there it is.
Where you at?
Drop down.
Where you at?
Scroll down.
Great Point is this.
What's in here is property taxes.
Yep.
It's in our utilities.
Yep. That's our operating expense for the ownership of the building. And then we build, yeah. That's why we're-
So if we are going to selectively demolish it this year, shouldn't that go down in the following years? And
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that,
It's such a large amount of money. That would have made up the whole contingency. Just to,
back in once we do. Always move it after what you do a budget of it. We've got 161 rating there. There's a portion of
Again, you do have to continue items.
it. Yeah. It'd be great there. Big part,
So I did,
good fun.
again, asking for double checks on my math, but if you take this total that we've been able to chip away is 345,000. So that is $5,859 more than what's needed for just so you know. $5,859. So you can leave it and it does whatever it does to our levy, but it certainly will bring it down of maybe a half cent or some fractional number. Or you can take it out and get to this exact number, like put it back into contingency if you want that exact number of 5,500. But that's where we're at with the math and the general, the motion on the general. If there's nothing further, we'll take a vote on the general fund as amended. Roll call.
I don't know what.
What? Oh, we didn't get a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the general fund as amended. We all clear where we're at? Further than roll call, please.
Alderperson Razzak. Finch.
Aye.
Finch, McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Aye. Schmidt.
Yay.
Murphy.
Motion passes 6-1. All right, we move to number 18. Review tip summaries.
But overall, everything's going well with our tips. Some of the values this year, just if we had increased valuation citywide on residential and commercial, values on the tips went up, and so that allow for additional increments. So whether it's rebates or anything, they're being on quicker, or if it's over the general fund or other funds, it's being paid back faster. The first chart, I'm just gonna go through a couple of summary charts for the individual funds. This one here is talking about projected advances to other funds. And in the past, those two little red boxes for tip number 7 and tip number 11 have been upwards of millions of dollars each. Tip number 7 was millions. And with LRS, that number has come down greatly. So right now, it appears we're going to be in good shape. By the time that tip closes, very close to closing. Right now, we're still not there. Pretty close. And then tip number 11, we've gotten that down to $2.7 million. Again, this is being cash flow by the general fund. One thing potentially that we can consider, I don't know how to use the word backtracking, but I can say backtrack. Right now, the tip laws have not been changed. So that if you have adjacent tips next to each other, if one is short and one has money, you can move the money over. So this tip number 11 that is in the hole, you can know where we are at. It is adjacent to the tip 13, and in 2031, it's a few years out. But in 2031, if that is continuing to be in the black, making money, and if there's excess reserves, that potentially can help pay down some of that deficit. And right now, that is illegal to do that. So we'll address that in 2030. Yes, and you said about how you couldn't do that? No, you said we weren't going to, not choosing not to. Okay, but choosing not to.
Yeah, I mean, I know the tip consultant was like, don't do this.
It's going to be, it was a very hot item. In
The letters, like,
yes,
That's
For
a conflict.
discussion. and I walked away from that. I think it continues to come, and it may very well not even be an issue, very much. But if it's there, it's just something to think about, and we're paying with over $2 million. Yeah. But that may be an option we have to look at year to year to year. But anyway, we're in better position than last year.
and something to consider where we're at for us. When are we doing the ribbon cutting? Or bulldozers?
We've certainly set it up where they can apply for a permit.
I think there are plans are approved.
And I think we were,
That said that he saw equipment out on the site. But
we've been through plan commission, good to go.
I think it's,
Yeah, but do we have confirmation they're actually doing the work and it's actually happening? I mean, he may be good to go, but if Ben said that he saw stuff on the site, that's a wrong sign,
Yeah.
we need confirmation.
we'll have the confirmation next week. Talk with the rep. I think we can send you a launch report.
I know, it's like, okay. Anything else from the council on this or?
For one slide down, I'm very short. This will be showing when I think there might be excess funds available for projects in these funds. And highlighted in that red area the first 3 years. You've got a couple $100,000 each year that you use. Some of that is in TIP 12. Some of them are in smaller funds like our old high school and the dog park. And Eric's already got projects allocated for that. So we have to spend in excess funds that can be available now. And as you look down on the tip number 13, is what I'm talking about, that potentially could help out number 11. If we head into years 30, 2032, you'll see there where there's starting to be excess money available for about 5 or 6, 7 years. This one, I can't see it. Over almost $3 million. So again, you can spend it on other projects within that chip, or you can help offset in short-term. Future discussions. Tips are all balanced. And again, par would be, maybe we'll split the par. We can go down. I'll take it very, very easy. I just want to make sure when there was tip number 14. It's highlighted in red, pink.
Just so you know, for ribbon cuttings, I did ask Jim Dawson yesterday. So yesterday, Alex, we met. Right,
Yes.
right, Mike, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So it's looking like there will be
And. Okay. And in this tip, as you know, we had a development agreement with this tip. And there were 2 phases for some flood protection. The first one was for, we had $1,275,000. That is in the very first column there, 2025. And that's the phase 2. That's what we were talking about, some temporary buildings for the city.
So they generate, until they generate income.
Oh, yes, no, it is going down.
And David is here, David, but he's quiet today, but the project has all been running, phase 1. Right? Phase 2 is coming.
We're talking about park?
Yeah, so project. The reason for this dramatic price increase is the Iowa Interstate prohibition of our original plans to develop the stormwater improvements, basically for our property all the way over to the 49. That's the reason for the increase.
Further? Okay, so we're needing a motion to approve tip fund as amended. Motion to approve. Okay, Bench and Schmidt, discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razak. Daniel. Bench. Castro. Murphy.
Yeah, motion passes. Review of internal service funds and 5-year cash flow projections.
Take a minute to go. And there certainly made changes if you wanted to. But the very first one is our budget and retirement health fund active. We touched on this on Tuesday night. The fund balances, as we showed, are all adequate and we have, we're not going to city policy at this time. We have projected claims and we have adequate fund balances if we happen to exceed those. It's well funded. We've opened up an actuarial report for OPEB funding, and we are right on the target of that as well. I don't know if you further than what we discussed on Tuesday.
Motion to approve internal service funds as presented.
Schmidt, you're like, so. Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razak. Simeon. French. McNeil. Castro.
Back page is only 1210. Enterprise funds.
Can I ask you roughly, the motion we just took was only on health fund. Are there further questions like on liability or?
Well, the motion was
Was actually Schmidt.
So I mean, I just said that one. And they're all in very, very good shape. We touched on them off and on with the budget session. So I'm happy with the motion. Well, the enterprise fund, and the same thing. Just as last meeting, October 14th, separate reading of the ordinance on the fees. Those fund balances have not changed, except with the exception of a slight tweak on the new position for the assistant utility director. And that in those funds, it does not affect the fees, and we anticipate those all three of those funds should be good. Effective for the 3 years.
Take it from council. Oh, no motions there, thank you. 21 debt service.
And our last one. Quick item of last page. In the effort, to just here's our tax abatement, we have our first reading of our property tax abatement. Our debt service fund, it continues to be declining, as you know, on our radar. We will be issuing bonds of 7.5%. And we will be going back to on bond issues for those. But right now, in front of you for, it will be October the 21st, will be the tax abatement form, and I have put a copy in the handouts. This is nothing new. And what it is saying is that with the exception of our pension obligation bonds that we all know we are leveraging for, that's $5,090,000 for the pension bonds that's in the levy. Everything else, we are abating taxes, home sales tax and other services. Previous years, they've all working very well. I will say too, we're very fortunate because most cities do have debt levies. And it's working very well with alternative sources because of those. And that, remember, I'm gonna get a question on that.
Any other comments on this?
I'm going to approve that service fund.
Second.
Second by Vivian, discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Vivian. Ben. Neil. Castro. Smith. Murphy.
All right, so this is where we were going to insert, the, motions, last two motions from item number 13. I think because it's all 13, and probably this discussion. Is that okay? Take another 10 minutes. Are we still on for lunch here? Do you have? Ms. Barnes has more information for us, but we do have like two leftover motions. Through discussion, or should we put the motion on the floor?
I have a motion that allocate $575,000 general fund reserve carry over from 12/31 to 4 to special CIP fund.
Second.
Motion by Schmidt, seconded by Timian.
Your Honor, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to allocate $500,000 to the special CIP fund and $75,000 to the public art fund.
Second.
Okay, that's motion by Schmidt, seconded by Timian.
So I made the motion that way so that we can actually present it in our regular model. So for our consideration, that's for when. So I just make one motion. So I thought that would be complicated. Maybe my intention was putting it as the first one. This way we talk about it and we can see it. As we look at the special, for the art fund, which we have been funded out of council contingency. And the additional drawdown from council contingency. I'm not comfortable with us coming down to what would be a contingency of $155,000. Because we're coming down from 400,000 less than 170 to 230,000. Less the $75,000 for. I will say this, ultimately, I will intend that we should take what's left out of this year and put it into special. CIP fund. I also don't think we should do that into your hands. Just because if something happens, it's there. So at the end of the day, I think, and that's why I didn't take it out of this week's calendar. I'm not that. I do think we'll make this $75,000 back. So that's why I'm telling my math.
Anything further from the council? Right? Yeah, please. Would you like to?
So the first way of motion we had $300,000. And then the amendment of the first is to put $500,000 carry over into the special CIP fund, and $75,000 in your public art fund. This also will call for it. However many visits it's not, take them into the figure out it.
But you have mentioned. Yes.
Let's deal with multi-digit funds.
Anything further? Hearing none.
Alderperson Razzak. Simeon.
Aye.
Motion passes.
He has moved it, so you have it.
Amended. Mr.
Your Honor, I would like to make $500,000 to be used for the fire department fund. In other words, a down payment, so we're borrowing this. So it's all special CID, but specifically which area, that's why Rio and
That makes sense.
Yeah. reducing.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
So
Further.
I guess the point is, that, the original intent of special was set up for this purpose. We have found money, let's throw it at this, bonding, so we can either borrow more for the city hall / apartment if we need to, or just have a lower amount of paying. And, obviously, any kind of money we have, we can throw off that debtor.
So essentially, the impact is moving $500,000 from the funds available into the fire fund, although that with an additional $500,000, beginning you can have it may impact the long-term costs, right?
Well, I guess where I was reading it is that we won't bond from the beginning.
Yes.
And then the principal and interest payments.
So yes, that's what I was just making sure that I'm understanding. Truthfully, you'll save $500,000 by doing.
Right.
Does Chief Raymond have any pieces?
Thank you.
I'm also anticipating that the cost might be, it would cost.
So we understand that this next amendment is about moving that $500,000 to support reducing. Oh, yeah. Okay. Nothing further in the proposals.
Alderperson Razzak.
Um,
Simeon.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil. Castro. Smith.
Aye.
Murphy.
Okay, that motion passes, so we have amended motion still on the floor. Carrying over from 12/31/24 into the special CIP and then into the fire. Anything further from the council? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak.
Aye.
Simeon.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Smith.
Aye.
Murphy.
Our next item on that was moved over from 13 is motion to approve 2026-2028 special CIP. And you were pointing us to about 10 or 11. I think before we get a motion on the floor, we need to understand where all of our small bites have landed us and which one we need to be looking at.
And hopefully you can do it all together with the and small. So first of all, are we going to do the option for it? Or do we?
We didn't even have option for it.
No.
We pull that.
Well, that's
That
it.
this from
Oh.
where you were, okay.
Okay, so I feel that
So we, well, basically, this number, no car right now, that they're up for. And we had to find, we actually, we would have to change the 339 of well, we don't know. We did for that. But at this point, do you have enough number to change that? How does this flow into what you're at?
I might just suggest. But follow general fund, the actual. But if we're following option 4, is that our total property tax dollars, 17,346,000. What will change there is that, starting with the yellow one, we generally, instead of 648, it would be 723,482. Which is under review. There for the parks, we reduced that by 50,000. So that would be 3,407,914. And to the library, would be 3,253,181. So together with the pension numbers, we did not change. That now equals again for 17,346,149. Then what will happen is that all of these little baby bites should call them. The remaining, that would be the 50,000, number 8 on the White House, 25,000 adjustment to the schools. The changes in the contingency funds, council contingency, 170,000, and then the administrators contingency for 25. Those funds those expenditures will be reduced. The reduction will then be transferred into the special CIP fund. So whatever fund is coming out of these are basically all the general. The general fund will be larger transfer to the special CIP fund, so that number stays the same as the admin rep, 987,000. But it still come in as a revenue line. So we're actually back to number 9. So we threw it around and back to number 10. We're gonna keep the 9087 as is. We will still have a transfer in from general over 575, but it will be reallocated. So the 500. Yeah, right. We change it. We'll be talking to the people should change it. 500, 700. But then the remaining, the capital projects, the unallocated and the yes.
Yeah, because we didn't change any of those, that's why option 10, the small change of, instead of 575 as revenue, it's 500. That's what you would ask us to, now, so we can keep it. Does that make sense, to everyone? We need a motion to approve.
Sure.
You have it?
Make a motion to approve 2026 from the special CIP fund as amended for option 10.
Right, motion by Schmidt, seconded by Finch. Wow, thank you for working us through that, that was pretty clear, but hoping you think through it, yeah. Any questions? So what we can summarize then is that we've been able to say that we are not touching the PCI index, strategic priorities. We are continuing to heavily invest in infrastructure. We basically just reduced costs of it in other parts of our budget.
In order to preserve our capital.
Okay, well, is there anything further? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. And then,
Okay, thank you very much, that motion passes.
Given, we need to now make a motion to go back and onto the allocation from council contingency in the parks.
Public art.
Public works.
I think today we need to clean that up so that it doesn't become two allocations that are set.
Yeah. Just the motion to divide the general fund. So you can do an additional motion or you can consider.
It would technically be a reconsideration because we've already voted on that particular amount. So it would be a motion to reconsider, which just means that it has to be moved by someone who voted in favor of that. Anyone who voted against it, I didn't keep track of the votes. Anyone who voted against it can't make that motion. They can second, but they can't make the motion.
Well, that would mean James cannot vote for it. This was our general one that's amended, correct? Yeah, that's what I meant. You can't make the.
Your Honor, was this the public art fund?
Oh, yeah, it's we. The
Oh,
public art
the
fund.
public art fund.
Can you give us the page that?
I just see the number of them.
Thank you. Yes, that was public art, and all 7 of you voted. affirmative. So anyone can make a motion to clarify what's happening with the subject matter.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the approval of the public arts funds.
Motion by Schmidt, seconded by Kimian. What?
We need to amend it. Now, first, you just read it, and then you'll have it on the floor and you can make the amendment.
Alderperson Zach.
Aye.
Simeon.
Aye.
Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro.
So now you can do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
So I just made the motion what it's done. Yeah, and the motion was on the floor for you. Right. I make a motion to amend the public art fund so that $75,000 from council contingency is removed. And $75,000 from the general fund reserves carried over is added to this.
Okay, thank you. That's motion by Schmidt, seconded by Kimian. Big conversation. Because it's basically,
I would like to apologize. We don't do a lot of reconsiderations here. It's fairly new. We almost think about it.
The last time we did one next.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, roll call, please.
Alderperson Zach. Simeon.
Aye.
Finch.
Okay, thank you everyone for that. We're back now to number 22. Item and final question on the 2025. Take a moment to look at what this first motion should be as written, correct, Carol, because we came up with the same dollar. This is up.
This is actually the added rest.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
You said to the 17 346 on 40.
So this motion would need to read as to establish 2026 property tax levy for general purposes, budget and municipal purposes. And then just the number, so everyone's clear on that.
And I make a motion to establish 2026 property tax levy for general corporate and special municipal purposes. No hearing needed is on 5% increase. First reading to be on October 21st, 2025. The tax amount shall be $17,346,149.
Motion by Schmidt, seconded by Castro. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Zach. Simeon. Finch. McNeil.
Aye.
Castro. Schmidt. Murphy.
Aye.
There is a motion to establish an SSA number 5 property tax guarantee for February 26th. First reading on October 31st, 2025. Amount $132,000. $132,475.
Discussion. Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Simeon.
Aye.
French. Castro. Smith. Murphy.
Item number 6.
I make a motion to establish SSA number 6 property tax levy for 2026. First reading on October 1st, 2025. $269,255.
Schmidt, any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Simeon.
Aye.
French.
Aye.
Castro. Smith. Murphy.
I think these are, we can just continue with this because.
Right. Rather than a motion to pay property tax that service law. Exception of pension obligation funds. First reading on
What's that enough to pay French? Hearing none, roll call please.
Alderperson Razzak. Simeon. French. Simeon.
Aye.
Castro. Smith.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
And no amendment for. Amended.
This is amending to that previous law. But when any changes made in the meeting today,
Incorporate all fund balance that is needed.
I don't think it's necessary to take any action.
Because all this is just like budget and nothing.
Right. All right, a motion to control the budget for October 28th, 2025.
Discussion.
We're on board for that, right? I wanted that picture to
It's on the calendar. So
Well, I just want to make sure that you still are saying yes, to support that.
So I do have a quick question. So is that canceling just the budget work session or are we fully canceling?
that's what the purpose of that.
That was the only purpose, so there's no reason.
And the reason I put this on the agenda for cancellation is that we've already been noticed to the public that there would be that meeting potentially for everyone in the public to be aware of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Wait a second. Yeah. Anything further from the council?
I just really like.
Alright, so roll call please.
Aye.
Alright, I need a vote, please, go back to the. Is there a public comment? Any miscellaneous business? Great, no more executive session. All in favor? Thank you.